Much for your presentation here today with us. We are going to start the meeting of the Seattle City Council Finance and Housing Committee. Today is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. My name is Teresa Mosqueda. I'm chair of the committee. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Herbold.
She is excused until 10:30.
Councilmember Peterson.
Present.
Councilmember Nelson.
Present.
Councilmember Lewis.
Present.
Madam Chair Mosqueda.
Present.
Madam Chair, that is 4 present and 1 excuse.
Thank you so very much. Thanks to everybody for joining us here today. We are going to have a conversation about the following agenda items: a briefing on the policies and procedures for disposition of excess city-owned properties, a briefing and discussion on the city budget office and central staff budget and fiscal policy work group, a briefing and discussion on the fiscal note enhancement, and a briefing and discussion on the 2023 mid-year supplemental grant acceptance ordinance. If there's no objection, today's agenda will be adopted. Hearing no objection, today's agenda is adopted. I'm excited we have some special guests with us this morning, and we will get a chance to dive into the presentation and hear from our special guests here momentarily, but we want to make sure to open it up for public comment. Madam Clerk, could you please tee up the video to roll public comment for us? And we will go ahead and have everyone have 2 minutes of public comment, and then we will have an opportunity to dive right into the
Hello, Seattle.
agenda.
We are the Emerald City, the city of flowers and the city of goodwill, built on indigenous land, the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples. The Seattle City Council welcomes remote public comment and is eager to hear from residents of our city. If you would like to be a speaker and provide a verbal public comment, you may register 2 hours prior to the meeting via the Seattle City Council website. Here's some information about the public comment proceedings. Speakers are called upon in the order in which they registered on the council's website. Each speaker must call in from the phone number provided when they registered online and use the meeting ID and passcode that was emailed upon confirmation. If you did not receive an email confirmation, please check your spam or junk mail folders. A reminder, the speaker meeting ID is different from the general listen line meeting ID provided on the agenda. Once a speaker's name is called, the speaker's microphone will be unmuted and an automatic prompt will say, "The host would like you to unmute your microphone." That is your cue that it's your turn to speak. At that time, you must press *6. You will then hear a prompt of, "You are unmuted." Be sure your phone is unmuted on your end so that you will be heard. As a speaker, you should begin by stating your name and the item that you are addressing. A chime will sound when 10 seconds are left in your allotted time, as a gentle reminder to wrap up your public comments. At the end of the allotted time, your microphone will be muted and the next speaker registered will be called. Once speakers have completed providing public comment, please disconnect from the public comment line and join us by following the meeting via Seattle Channel broadcast or through the listening line option listed on the agenda. The council reserves the right to eliminate public comment if the system is being abused, or if the process impedes the council's ability to conduct its business on behalf of residents of the city. Any offensive language that is disruptive to these proceedings or that is not focused on an appropriate topic as specified in council rules may lead to the speaker being muted by the presiding officer. Our hope is to provide an opportunity for productive discussions that will assist our orderly consideration of issues before the council. The public comment period is now open, and we will begin with the first speaker on the list. Please remember to press *6 after you hear the prompt of, "You have been unmuted." Thank you, Seattle.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, we will go ahead and proceed with folks who are in the room. Is there anybody signed up for public comment in the room? Seeing none, let's go ahead and go online. I do see somebody signed up for public comment. Tiffany McCoy, you are up first and you will have 2 minutes.
Thanks. Good morning, council members. I'm calling in regards to items numbers 1 and 2 on the agenda today. I wanted to talk specifically about the move, from what I understand in the report, to biennial budget. And I'm asking that there be a consideration discussed before enshrining anything into new law for ballot initiatives. As you all know, I-135 passed in the February special election by 57% of the voters. And while we were trying to figure out during the implementation stages that there is actually a cap between budgets of $20,000 that can go towards citizens initiatives. That hasn't been updated, that figure for decades, if I'm not incorrect. That was put into the charter in 1946. So if we're moving to biennial budgets and we're requiring just 1 or 2 council members to put forward amendments and find cuts to support citizens initiatives in the future, I ask for consideration to be made over increasing that cap in the SMC or having a carve out for ballot initiatives. Secondly, for the city's disposal of excess city land, appreciate that this is happening and making sure that it aligns with what the voters mandated in Initiative 135. I appreciate Councilmember Morales reaching out to the campaign to ask for language around social housing so that can be part of the disposition policy, and wasn't necessarily seeing anything specific in the presentation. I understand that there isn't a law written on updating the disposition policy yet, but looking forward to seeing that when that does become public, to make sure that it does align with what voters push. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else signed up for public comment here today? Okay, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and move on to other items on our agenda. Colleagues, it's my honor to be able to daylight a conversation that we are just beginning to have about how we are going to have an opportunity to look at our land disposition policies, and I will do my best to provide a quick summary of the land disposition policies. It's a very wonky name for a very exciting policy that we were able to put into statute in 2018. We began the conversations and then included those into Seattle Municipal Code again in 2019. So I'm really excited that we're having a chance to have a conversation today, but I want to preface it by saying this is a very preliminary conversation. There is some deep stakeholdering work that we want to do with members of our community, including members of our Native community, and have government to government conversations with tribal organizations, tribal governments. And we want to make sure that we're having conversations as well with our broader stakeholder and community organizations who were part of the original land disposition policy. So very excited to, in a transparent way, be able to daylight some initial discussions that we're having today, and to be able to give folks in the community a sense of how exciting it is that we were able to move forward on the land disposition policies a few years ago and get a chance to visit them again this year. There is no time crunch that we're under to update these land disposition policies. We confirmed that as well earlier this week, that we still have an abundant time to have discussions with members of the executive team in the mayor's office, members of the community at large. You heard from some folks calling in from Initiative 135 today. And today we'll also hear from our tribal representatives, council members who are here to have government to government discussion about how we could potentially move forward with enhancing our land disposition policies in the future. I'm excited to know that we have a long runway on this. There's nothing that is requiring us to wrap up this conversation before budget even. I was initially thinking that we had to wrap it up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Turns out we have a little bit more time. So that's always a good thing to make sure that we get policy right. But this is a preliminary discussion about how we can work in partnership with governments in our region, our tribal governments, Native organizations, community organizations that are led by folks who are at highest risk of displacement. I'm talking about our Black and Brown community members who really are trying to step into the world of building affordable housing through the community lens to serve communities at highest risk of displacement. And here we are today for an opportunity to initiate a conversation that will take fold over the next few months, and to ensure that we have a policy that is taking every opportunity we can for public land to be used for the public's good. quick background on this before I open it up to our community partners is to let you know that the land disposition policy that we had put into place really began in 2018, thanks to the leadership from Representative Frank Chop, who was Speaker of the House at the time. He acted in 2018 and again in 2019 to change state legislation so that local jurisdictions like Seattle could have the opportunity to declare surplus property surplus, and that we could, instead of selling it on the private market to the highest bidder, we could retain it in public hands or use it for the public's good in partnership with community organizations who are interested in serving the public. In 2019, we updated our land disposition policy, stating that when property is declared surplus for the city, we need to make sure that we're prioritizing affordable housing to be built on that land wherever possible, and that we transferred land at low or no cost to affordable housing partners to create housing on site. We also enhanced the policy to ensure that folks who were building affordable housing, who were led by and serving communities at highest risk of displacement, really were considered at the top of the line. We did this as well with our funding policies through the Administration and Finance Plan, I'm looking at Councilmember Nelson, the policy we just passed, our housing levy policy that we just passed earlier this year includes it, as well as our Jumpstart housing directive as well. So it's both about access to land, but we also are complementing that with access to funding. It's not just about the land policies when we know how expensive it is to build as well. So that's just background to say that we are trying in every facet that we can through public policy to really support our community who is trying to serve communities at highest risk of displacement. We know that's our Native community, folks of color, including our Black community, Latino community, API community, and we want to do anything that we can within the city to further our efforts to really make sure that land is going into the public's good and that we're building access to housing, as well as complementing it with cultural services like community gathering spaces, childcare, small business opportunities. Now, 4 years later, we have seen the proof that this type of policy is successful. We have 4 sites that have been transferred to affordable housing providers and more in the pipeline. We wanted to take this opportunity as a 4-year review to take a look at reaffirming our commitment to supporting affordable housing through this policy. And we, as you heard, are very interested in working with the Office of Housing, who has let us know that they have the administrative ability to move forward with implementing Initiative 135. And of course, when this policy is updated in the future, we would want to make sure that language is included that codifies that, and wouldn't move forward with anything on that until stakeholders have been included as well. I do want to thank Councilmember Morales for working with our office to help craft some initial language, but I wanted to really flag for folks that this is a very preliminary conversation. While we know we have Initiative 135 to incorporate in the future, we also have some really exciting conversations that are happening in Washington State, in Pierce County. There's some great examples of the public health jurisdiction in Pierce County moving forward with providing tribal governments first opportunity for surplus land. There's some really great conversations that I think we can have as we reevaluate this policy on how we can move forward to incorporate additional strategies to ensure that folks have access to surplus land that the city no longer deems necessary, and that we're putting that to the best use for the community at large, especially our community who is at highest risk of displacement. So, with that little bit of background and more recent information that we have a longer time frame to consider any possible updates, I wanted to let folks know that we have an incredible opportunity here today to hear from some members of our tribal governments that are with us, and also the Tribal Affairs Director. And this is just the beginning of a conversation that we know will be much longer. Before I turn it over to our special guests and have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the vision of how we could move forward, I wanted to again emphasize there's not policy yet created on this. Today is a conversation around values and vision for how we could potentially move forward. akin to what Pierce County has done. We have time to make sure that this is a thoughtful discussion and that nobody feels rushed from the community, especially want to make sure to get this right as we move forward, because it could be groundbreaking for other jurisdictions as well to look at. So we have plenty of time. This is not something that has to be wrapped up before the budget deliberations, but it is very timely given what's going on in Pierce County, our interest in revisiting the land disposition policy 4 years after it passed. And because we have our Indigenous Advisory Committee that has been created and is a body that we can go to for advice in addition to our community partners. I wanted to ask Tracy Ratscliffe if there's anything else you would like to add in terms of context for the land disposition policy of the past. We probably won't go to the PowerPoint presentation because it's a little bit for background, but is there anything you'd like to add for context on the land disposition policy as originally passed?
No, Councilmember Mosqueda, as usual, you have done a very good job of painting the context for this conversation. So I do not have anything to add.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. With that, want to just say thank you again to our community partners and Patience Malaba from the Housing Development Consortium. I wasn't able to be with us here today, but she did send a quick statement. So maybe I'll read that as an introduction to our special guests here today. Patience Malaba, who's the Executive Director from the Housing Development Consortium, says, "We are incredibly pleased with Councilmember Mosqueda's outstanding leadership in championing vital policy changes that directly address displacement and prioritize the right of first refusal to tribes and urban Native organizations. Back in 2018, when we implemented policy adjustments, our primary focus was to ensure that underutilized city-owned land and properties would be considered first for the construction of affordable housing rather than being sold on the private market. This bold change has fearlessly confronted the challenges posed by lack of affordable homes, available affordable homes, mitigating the heightened risk of displacement, and ensuring that public land is made accessible at the lowest cost to create more affordable housing to our most economically vulnerable residents. Thanks to these efforts, we have forfeited our commitment to building a vibrant and inclusive city for all. Fortified, let me restate that. We have fortified our commitment to building a vibrant and inclusive city for all." Well, with us here today to talk a little bit just again about values and vision and lots of policy details to be determined as we go through this intense stakeholder process. To initiate this discussion, we are so thrilled to have Vice Chair Donnie Stevenson from the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe and member of the Indigenous Advisory Council here with us today. And I see Tim Rainin, Tribal Affairs Director at the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, who also has an incredible history and resume on working with tribal governments. And I believe we also will be joined by Jay Mills, Councilmember Jay Mills of the Squamish Tribe and Indigenous Council member as well, Indigenous Advisory Council member as well. Vice Chair Stevenson, would I be able to turn it over to you first for some initial comments? Oh, your audio is not working. Maybe we didn't get a chance to check that beforehand.
You can't hear me?
Oh, all good now.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, Vice Chair. The clerk has been letting me know we have not read item number 1 into the record. So if I could do that first for procedural, I'll turn it back over to you.
Agenda
Absolutely.
item number 1, policies and procedures for disposal of excess city-owned properties for briefing and discussion.
Excellent. Okay. And thank you so much for your patience, Vice Chair. We'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Donnie Stevenson, Tita, Buckleshoot, Abched. Good morning or good day. My name is Donnie Stevenson, and I'm Muckleshoot. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, as well as a member of the City of Seattle's Indigenous Advisory Council. In way of providing some context for the council, the IAC is a culturally grounded commission advising the city.
Vice Chair.
Yes.
So sorry, your microphone is it's a little staticky. I think it's working best when you're sitting back. I'm not
Uh,
sure exactly. I'm not an IT person, but I thought I'd offer that.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, so, uh, so the council is ultimately a 9-member council. We advise the city on issues impacting tribal and urban Native communities, a range of perspective on policy issues impacting Native communities. This work with the Indigenous Advisory Council is separate from the city's commitment to engage in government-to-government relationships with sovereign tribal nations. While there are several tribal leaders advising on this policy work, we also clearly strongly encourage these conversations to continue with offices of intergovernmental relations and tribal consultation. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here today to represent my people and to come together regarding this policy I use or good work representing all people. In doing so, I'd like to acknowledge the spirit of collaboration and friendship on display, and I'd like to thank the honorable members of the Finance and Housing Committee for your time and consideration. Specifically, thank you, Councilmember Mosqueda, for your ever-present collaboration, partnership, and leadership and advocacy on these issues. I'd also like to honor and acknowledge our elders and ancestors. Thanks to the cultural teachings and traditional values we've been gifted through their wisdom for literally thousands of years and hundreds of generations, we Indigenous people, the Muckleshoot people, have remained the ancestral keepers of the very land that we're gathered to discuss today. We thank them for this opportunity and for all they've contributed to our city and the region. Indigenous history really is, and the story of our people, it really is Seattle's history. It's Washington State history, and it's a vital chapter of the story of U.S. history. I come before you today humbly and again in the spirit of collaboration. And it's with this historic measure in mind that I offer several important thoughts and perspective. Prioritizing tribal and urban Native communities for land disposition is a critical next step in preparing or repairing the ongoing harm of colonization. The city of Seattle would be among the first jurisdictions in the entire country to move beyond land acknowledgements and towards meaningful action that cedes power and resources to tribes and urban Indian organizations, placing traditional Indigenous lands back into Indigenous hands. In taking this important step, we look forward to the city to strengthen tribal sovereignty and to help support self-determination of Native people through land access that will increase opportunities in tangible, meaningful ways for culturally attuned, affordable housing development. As tribal governments, the urban and urban Indian organizations, we absolutely know best how to serve our people. We've done this for thousands of years and for hundreds of generations, and really since time immemorial. We also know and recognize that not all lands are necessarily suitable for affordable housing development. And in these cases, the city is well positioned to prioritize tribes in reacquiring ancestral homeland and supporting urban Indian organizations in acquiring land that allows them the opportunity to continue to support diversity of the Native peoples of our region. Again, placing traditional lands of the original peoples back into those original peoples' possession for continued management and stewardship. Finally, the reclamation of Indigenous lands is so fundamentally tied to the important work of growth and healing. This principle represented daily in virtually all aspects of Indigenous life by the reclamation and assertion of Indigenous identity, language and cultural revitalization, food sovereignty, indigenous environmentalism. To be indigenous, really to be Muckleshoot, inherently means not only that the Salish Sea in this region is a part of us as a people, but conversely that each of us are a part of the Salish Sea. What serves the land serves our people. What heals this land also heals our people. We're not separate nor distinct from one another, but indeed we're one, sustaining, providing for, and ultimately defining one another. The measure before you and sort of the idea that's being discussed for your consideration, it really is historic. It allows the city to take a small step forward in addressing the impacts of colonization and the chronic underfunding of federal trust obligations and responsibilities that have left so many tribal and Indian urban communities with little to no access to land and constrained participation in the affordable housing sector. In providing a brief clarifying glimpse of policy rationale behind prioritizing Native members and communities, we must begin with first understanding that housing is a specific area of federal trust responsibility to the many tribes and our members. Coupled with some of the unpleasant but very real history regarding local, regional, and federal policies that forcibly relocated and aimed to assimilate Native peoples, including forced removal and relocation to reservations, land allotment and termination policies. They've all led to fractionalization and outright loss of tribal lands. Muckleshoot, as a specific example, at our most challenged point, we only owned about a third of an acre of communal land holdings. This was the lot on which our tribal community center sat. And when I'm talking about this, this wasn't ancient history. Realistically, a single generation ago, during the mid-1970s. So this is a date reflective of being well within many of our lifetimes. Additionally, impactful urban relocation policies and programs that were
Vice Chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vice Chair. I think that the audio was cutting in and out, but we've been able to hear the content, but it's starting to get a little bit worse. I wonder if the earbuds might, if they came out, if that might help. I don't know. Oops. If it's not possible, I don't want to cut you off from saying what you were saying because it was so important and we could hear the content. I just want to make sure that if it was starting to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, technical difficulties. The area.
That's pretty good. That's better.
I'm almost there. I'm almost done.
No problem. I mean, honestly, we can hear the content of what you're saying, and it is so powerful. I just didn't want anything to get lost, but we can definitely hear you still. So.
Okay. So ultimately, what I was talking about was that relocation policies. So ultimately, those were aimed at an attempt to assimilate Native people and populations in urban areas, and Seattle is specifically included in those policies. These histories and ongoing policy decisions have all led to major disparities in tribal and urban Native land ownership and access to affordable housing. The city of Seattle is inherently an indigenous city in nature, owing so much of its history and identity to the first peoples of this land. Today represents an important recognition and celebration of this fact. We have an opportunity to be amongst the first in the nation to work toward legitimate and meaningful action and acknowledging our shared history. All of this being said, it's an absolute blessing to be able to say, Yaya Speed Chuth, that we are working on it. In meaningful ways and in placing healing and reconciliation at the forefront. In a world filled with problems, we get to be a foundation of solutions. I'm incredibly thankful for this. My hands are raised to all who have worked and discussed and talked to make this possible. And to be able to be here today to speak to this is truly meaningful. And it's a historic measure again. There's an expression in our language that honors the people and honors sort of the sacred nature of work like that. And I think it's appropriate in this case. It means for all our people. So I raise my hand. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our thoughts. And apologies for any technical difficulty associated with it.
Well, thank you very much. Very powerful words. And I think that the content we could hear even when there was a little bit of static. So would love to receive those comments if you'd be willing to share, and then we can share it with the council, and we can share it with our newsletter as well, because I think that it's exciting to talk about the conversation to come. And it's critical that we understand the foundation for why we need to have this discussion and the history that's gone into the reason these discussions are so imperative for us to right some historic wrongs. So thank you for sharing your words, and we will make sure that everybody has a chance to read through those as well. With that, I want to say thank you. And of course, please pass on our appreciation to your colleague on the Indigenous Advisory Council. Councilmember Mills is not going to be able to join us today from the Squamish tribe, but wanted to say thank you for his interest as well. And with that, I'm excited that for the first time in this committee, we have Tribal Affairs Director Tim Rennan from the Office of Intergovernmental Relations with us. Tim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Mosqueda. CEAB shed. Tim Raynon Tidsta. Spoyalapop shed. Good day to you, honorable, noble people, my dear people. My name is Tim Raynon. I'm a member of the Puyallup tribe, and I'm the Tribal Relations Director in the Office of Intergovernmental Relations here at the city. My role here is to help facilitate the government-to-government consultation and engagements between the city and our federally recognized tribes, help build and strengthen those relationships, and to advise city elected leaders and staff on matters relating to tribal relations, as the title would suggest. I want to just start out by thanking Vice Chair Stevenson for laying the foundation, the groundwork, the values around this policy, and why this type of a policy, it's exciting to see the city of Seattle engage on discussions about the policy. I was involved in discussions with folks down in Pierce County prior to coming to the city in development of the policy that the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department ultimately passed. Prior to their adoption of the policy, Tacoma Public Utilities, I think, became the first government entity in the nation to pass a policy that provided opportunities for tribes to receive land back. And then after they passed theirs in 2018, the city of Tacoma followed suit and adopted a policy that provides opportunity for tribes to have a right of first refusal. And that happened in 2019. And then Tacoma Pierce County Health Department passed theirs last year in 2022. So this is the, bit of the background of cutting edge type of policies that are being developed right here in our region. And so really, this is a great opportunity for us to work with them. And really, I'm extremely pleased with Councilmember Mosqueda and her staff for reaching out to the tribes and engaging with the tribes from the very beginning of the development of this policy. This is something that we recently discussed with tribal leaders at the Tribal Nation Summit that was held back in May. And doing this, engaging with tribes from the very beginning, is the type of tribal engagement that we are trying to encourage and do here at the city, involving tribes early and often in the policy development process. And so I just commend Councilmember Mosqueda and staff and the city for this type of engagement, for following through with the discussions that we've had at the Tribal Nation Summit. And I just raise my hands to you and all of this committee and all those that are involved in this. So I'll leave it at that. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And thank you very much. We're really excited about the role that you have in the Intergovernmental Relations Office, and very excited about your long tenure and history that you bring to the city of Seattle now. And as you noted, very, very, very interested in working in partnership with you and the mayor's office and the broader community on how to continue this discussion that we've initiated. Again, thanks to central staff and really to Aaron House on my staff, who's chief of staff in our office and who is lead on all things land and housing. We wanted to initiate this discussion with community to see how and when the land disposition policies could be updated. Again, we have new information as of this week that it doesn't have to be updated by statute this year. We do believe that the Office of Housing has indicated the ability to move forward administratively with the initial steps for 135 already. And so that gives us a little bit of time to further these discussions about other types of policy considerations, like ensuring tribal governments and Native organizations are also included in this conversation. Director Reynolds, I wondered if you had any additional context that you'd like to provide on what Pierce County had incorporated into their statute and some of the lessons learned from there.
Sure. When you look at the three different policies down in Pierce County, there's kind of a progression that has taken place. TPU's initial policy gave a right of first refusal, or provided notice to both federally recognized tribes and other government authorities like the county, so that governmental authorities and tribes would have an opportunity to obtain the land equally. The city of Tacoma then followed theirs up, that provided a written notice and a right of first refusal to the Puyallup tribe, which is the tribe that is located there in the city of Tacoma, a right of first refusal for the purchase of property to the tribe. And then Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, most recently, they prioritized the interest of federally recognized tribes as the #1 priority, returning land to the tribes. And in their policy, they will negotiate an intergovernmental land transfer for full value with the tribe. With all of these different governmental entities, the Puyallup tribe was involved in consultation, in negotiation, and discussions in the development of the policies. So that's an example of, how they worked with the tribe, the local tribe there, to develop their policy.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for sharing the interest in this discussion to both Vice Chair and our Director here with us. Thank you for helping, infuse the historical context for why and the excitement about the future discussions. And to the callers that dialed in, we know that there's a broader discussion to be had about the disposition policies generally. So we will continue the discussion over the next I would say 3 to 6 months. I might not be here in the final days, but we wanted to make sure that we initiated this. And I see one hand from Councilmember Nelson, and then we're going to move on to our next item.
Okay, so we're not going to go through, then I was
Oh,
going to wait until okay, so I'm glad that we're discussing this, because I was inspired when I joined Tim on a sister city trip to New Zealand and learned that the government of Christchurch does offer the first right of refusal to the Ngāi Tahu, which is the corporate entity representing 18 sub-tribes in on the South Island for acquisition of property, because a lot is available following the earthquake. So that was inspiring, and we talked about that a little bit. And I will be, I just skimmed the presentation, and I'll be interested in understanding more about how we define what, if property is transferred, surplus property is transferred, why define what a tribal government might want to build there, housing, or maybe a for-profit enterprise or something like that. But I'm just really glad that you're bringing this forward, because it is important to really put some intention behind our, when we talk about land back, it's time to move this forward. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And speaking of timing, we will really follow the lead of the community conversations that we have and see what is possible in the near term. And just want to make sure that we're intentionally setting up these discussions so that they are fully informed and thoughtful moving forward. So lots more discussion to be had. And thank you so much for getting us kicked off. Vice Chair Stevenson, anything else on your end before we head out?
Again, just thank you for the opportunity to be the occasion. I think the historic nature of the dialogue is really important to highlight. That we'll all be able to say we were here when this conversation started, and that's an incredibly meaningful and powerful thing. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you so much, and more to come. Okay, thanks, colleagues. See you very soon. All right, we will go ahead and move on to item number 2. Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 2 into the record?
Agenda item number 2, City Budget Office and Central Staff Budget and Fiscal Policy Work Group for briefing and discussion.
Thank you so much. And with us today, we are joined with the Director of Central Staff. We have Esther Handy. Thank you so much for being here. We have our Director of the City Budgets Office. Thank you so much to Director Julie Dingley for being here and for all of the work that you've done. This is our opportunity to hear a report back from these two directors on a statement of legislative intent that was included in the budget process last fall. Our 2023 adopted budget requested recommendations from the Council Central Staff and City Budgets Office through a work group that was convened to analyze recommendations related to the annual budget process and the treatment of the general fund planning reserves. I'm excited to have such esteemed leaders here with us today who have been working with their teams to provide recommendations to the council and the mayor's office on how our city process could be enhanced. And I'm thrilled that we're going to have an opportunity to have both of them here with us today. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion that will help tee us up for future budgetary actions and future fiscal note process going forward. With that, Director Dingley, Director Handy, welcome. And I think I'll turn it over to Director Handy first.
Thank you, Chair Mosqueda. Esther Handy, Director of the Council Central Staff. For the record, I'm going to let Deputy Director Ali Panucci pull up slides for us. Director Dingley, do you want to introduce yourself for the record, and then I'll dive in?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Julie Dingley. I have the honor of serving as the Budget Director for the City of Seattle's Budget Office.
Great. So we participated together in a Central Staff and City Budget Office work group that met 6 times this spring in response to a statement of legislative intent 322A1. Next slide shows the goals of our recommendations that we are putting forward before you today. The first is to increase transparency in city budgeting and spending. The second is to create sustainable budgets that maintain appropriate service levels and allow city staff and contractors delivering services to focus on service performance and outcomes. So a little bit less time budgeting, a little bit more time thinking about what are the outcomes of that budgeting and sort of what's coming ahead for us in future years. And the third, in the context of our city's biennial budget process, is to shift that second year budget, shift those goals towards financial monitoring and planning. So really digging into those conversations. How are new programs faring? What is the rate of spending? Where are cost savings being achieved? What does our financial trajectory look like in the future? We think this in turn will improve both our financial management and the information that our budget decision makers on both the executive and council side have to inform their decisions. So in that context, next slide shows our first recommendation, which is one that you will be familiar with. This is to institute new practices for a mid-biennial budget review starting in fall 2023. In this context, executive departments have been asked to balance new requests and needs within their endorsed budgets, and council budget actions will need to be self-balanced. This process should look and feel more like a review of an endorsed budget rather than the construction of a new annual budget, and we expect the scale of changes should reflect that spirit. The next three recommendations on our next slide relate to mid-year budget changes, where we are striving for a more predictable cadence of this decision-making. The first is to accept and appropriate grants in a single standalone ordinance 3 times a year. We collectively piloted this spring, and the second bill that looks like this will be in front of you today next to the mid-year supplemental. When we accept and appropriate in the same bill, it allows departments to more efficiently deploy their resources rather than accepting and waiting for the next appropriations bill. Collectively, we would like to establish in policy what has been involved in practice, which is the cadence on this slide. That means the executive would transmit and the council would see a first year grant acceptance and appropriation ordinance in February, March, the mid-year supplemental and grants ordinance mid-year, and a year-end supplemental ordinance and grants ordinance that come with the next year's proposed budget. In the case of an emergency, both the executive and council would retain flexibility to pick up a bill outside this cadence, but in quote unquote regular times, if there are such, this would be the rhythm that we are working collectively towards. And finally, in this category, we recommend a small expansion of authority of the budget director to move funds mid-year. So she currently has the authority to transfer up to $500,000 or up to 10% of any individual budget control level mid-year. As we sort of rolled up our sleeves and looked at some examples, we saw several where that 10% ended up being an unnecessarily low cap for small budget control levels. So for these smaller BCLs, this proposed change would allow a transfer up to $250,000. These are BCLs up to $2.5 million without that 10% cap. I'm going to move to financial plans. Before I do that, Director Dingley, do you have anything to add on these first couple? Okay, great. I will keep going. Council members will raise your hand at any time, but we'll take questions at the end if we don't see hands go up. Recommendation 5 is to standardize financial plan guidelines across all funds. As a reminder, financial plans look at the financial trajectory of a fund in out years. So the recommendation is that financial plans transmitted with the budget reflect current law or the proposed changes in law transmitted with the budget. And this should include any projected growth that is known, including in contract provisions. Plans should be informed by the best available information about revenue and spending projections with transparency about all the assumptions that have been used. Our friends at the budget office have to make a lot of assumptions and in departments about what are growth and costs. Those should be clearly written out so that council decision makers know what is underlying the assumptions. And finally, we clarify what a 6-year financial plan means. It means the last year, the current year, the budget being developed, and 3 forecasted years. And the goal here is by creating more consistency across all the city funds, we can increase the use of these financial plans to inform current year decision-making. Next slide is about financial monitoring. So to better track spending throughout the year, Director Dingley and her team have developed a new financial monitoring program. It has department finance staff, FAS accountants and CBO analysts meeting regularly and looking at a standard set of questions about spending year to date so that variance can be understood, efficiently communicated, and acted upon. The program is new, it's in development, it is a significant culture change to do something like this citywide. As it becomes more robust, there will be opportunities for central staff to engage in those mid-year conversations. And ultimately, we are hopeful that this will produce better data for departments, the executive and council decision makers about the cost to deliver city services, over and underspend during the year, and projections at year end. Recommendation 7 states our intention to review and consolidate the financial policies across the city to make it easier to track and use those policies. These policies are currently included throughout the code, and others sit outside the municipal code because they were adopted by resolution when the city created or updated a new fund. We collectively acknowledge that there isn't current staff capacity to do recommendation 7. And so our intention is to continue to revisit this as capacity is freed up and allowed. So we think it is an important thing to get these in one place for all staff across the city. The final conversation we had is about planning reserves. We talked a lot about the ways that city reserves funding for future needs. And I'll remind this committee that the city has 2 formal reserves. The general fund emergency fund, which is to draw upon for unanticipated expenses during the year. This is like a national disaster, a pandemic, public health emergency. We also have a revenue stabilization fund to draw upon in the event of a sudden unanticipated shortfall in revenue from an economic downturn or similar event. And then this third bucket is planning reserves, which are unappropriated fund balances that are held for current or future year costs. The bulk of these are for things like labor contracts under negotiation, or the judgment and claims fund, things the city knows are coming and generally has an aspect of confidentiality to them. So they are set aside until the appropriate time to spend them. We made 2 recommendations here with the goal of increasing transparency about the size and scale of the budget overall, and to develop a stronger sense of shared ownership between the executive and council about these reserve decisions. So for the next biennium, 25-26, we recommend exploring a consistent way to brief the select labor committee on those labor reserves, and creating an appropriated risk reserve for items with confidentiality considerations, as some of our peer jurisdictions do. So we look forward to kind of looking at those and bringing some best practices and ideas back about how we might do so. That is all 8 of our recommendations. I'll hand it to Director Dingley if she has anything to add, and then open it up for questions.
Excellent.
Thanks, Director Handy. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Director Handy and her team for the partnership that we have built between the City Budget Office and Council Central staff. It hasn't always been smooth sailing between our 2 offices, but I think that we have set a new standard for how we can work together. And so we're just really, really proud of the work that these teams have done to come together to create the recommendations that Director Handy walked you through this morning.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Director Dingley. Thank you, Director Handy, for walking us through this presentation. I want to say how much I appreciate the quick work that went into this. I know that this is very detailed discussions, and you're doing this in addition to everything else that each division is working on, or each branch of government is working on, frankly. So thank you for your fast work on this. I'm not seeing any hands. It does bring to mind to me the desire to act swiftly to try to move forward on some of these recommendations. And I do that for 2 reasons. One is we have been in this role for 3 years now, we being my office. And as chair of the budget committee, this is one of the first things that I saw as a need, coming from having lobbied in our state capital for so many years. The desire to see both fiscal note transparency and longer term projections for fiscal impact was something that was a necessity. And in addition to that, wanting to have a more reliable process that allowed for both community organizations, grant recipients, and our city family, including employees, to have a better sense of what the 2-year trajectory was for our city, if not the 6-year trajectory. So moving towards biennial budgeting is something I'd be very interested in. I understand that there's many processes that need to be updated, and as fast as maybe I want to move and our budget director might want to move and our central staff director might want to move, we can't do all of these things overnight, but I would like to take the opportunity to move forward on some of these recommendations, given the conversation we've had over the last 3 years about wanting to move in this direction. I feel like there's some considerations we could be moving forward on now, and recognize that those are maybe just some first steps as we work towards true biennial budgeting and further transparency. So with, I guess for the purposes of discussion, I'll just tee up what reading the central staff memo and the recommendations brought to light for me, and then ask for some additional work to come forward from this, and to see if that also tees up any other questions for my colleagues. I would like for us to move forward on 2 fronts at the very least here. It seems to me that there's an opportunity for 2 pieces of legislation that this committee could consider as we head into the budget deliberations this fall. Ideally, if we could take July, August, September to consider 2 strategies, 2 policies that could concretize some of these recommendations, I would feel like we are in a good starting place for moving forward on the whole suite of recommendations in the future. The first one that comes to mind is a resolution to update and reflect the current practices for the city's annual budget process and mid-year budget changes. Again, I want to say thank you to the budget director. Director Dingley coming into this role really has a shared vision, I think, with our office and central staff for how we could be streamlining some of our budget processes, right? Getting away from quarterly supplemental budgets was one of the first things that we did in this role, because it didn't make sense to have a budget that you pass in November and then have another quarterly supplemental process in December, just to take on a first quarter supplemental process in January, February, and March. That just doesn't make sense. It's a lot of extra work for folks, and there's not a lot of stability with that. So let's at least have a resolution, if not an ordinance. I'm always interested in codifying through ordinance versus resolution where possible, but at least an ordinance to update and reflect our current policies for the city's annual budget process and the mid-year budget changes that we've made. The second thing I'd like to do is, in line with the fiscal transparency program that we have talked about through the recommendations, and some of our current colleagues are also interested in continuing to enhance the transparency of the system. I would like for us to create a new fiscal transparency program in Seattle Municipal Code to codify certain fiscal transparency reporting requirements and processes, with the intent to be that this be a package that memorializes the policy, the process, and the practices for enhanced transparency. So to be a little bit more specific, based on the work group recommendation, I would like for central staff to prepare a resolution that would supersede the current resolution going into the city budget process. So that's resolution 2885 and 3194. And instead of that, let's have a new process that covers these 3 areas. First, biennial budget direction, including the approach to mid-year biennial budget reviews. That was recommendation number 1, and I think that's low-hanging fruit. The second is the set of the cadence for the mid-year budget review process. You remember this is recommendations 2 and 3. So first quarter grant acceptance ordinance, mid-year that would be February and March, and then mid-year the supplemental grant and supplemental budget and grant ordinances. So that would be around now in July. And then at the end of the year in September, a year-end supplemental and grants ordinance. And that's again summarized in recommendations 2 and 3. And finally, I would love for us to define next steps for planning reserves, including the creating appropriated risk reserve that is operationalized in the 2025-2026 biennial process. Again, that is recommendation number 8. So I think, to get out of the weeds, for folks who are reading the recommendations, process to help us move forward on recommendations 1, 2, 3, and 8 at the very least, just to get this ball rolling. Yes, please go ahead, Councilmember Nelson.
So my staff worked in Olympia, and so they also, like you, have insight into different budgeting processes. For me, I don't know how to respond to a lot of what we've talked about because I don't know what needs fixing. But I am interested in doing so. I think that I'll have to understand a little bit more what is happening right now that the recommendations that you just read will aid in fixing. I do say that I thought that we were already sort of only doing mid-year supplemental, not doing quarterly. But if a resolution is to make that more concrete, or that is fine with me because it doesn't seem to be time worthy to do it every quarter. For transparency, central staff has heard me mention this before, but when we talk about deficits, we have revenues that go into specific funds that that are outside of the general fund. So they don't show up when we look at out year deficits. And one thing that I was thinking about that would aid in transparency would be to somehow figure those funds like Jumpstart and soda, the sweetened beverage tax and all those different revenue sources that we receive. They should be more visible when we're talking about the budget, the health of our budget right now, because when we look at graphs of expenditures, those expenditures do include expenditures from those funds, but the revenue line does not show the incoming revenue from those special funds. So that is one item that I'd like to have discussed when we talk about transparency and how we figure or show our budget to the public.
Yeah. I see Deputy Director Panucci also on the screen. And then if central staff have some comments, then I'll also add to what Councilmember Nelson just said. Anything from central staff or our director from CBO?
No, just to say, I think that one of the big challenges, and agree, Councilmember Nelson, is how do we effectively communicate about all of the city's funding sources? What are the restrictions? What is restricted by current law? What could be changed with the change of current law to better understand what are kind of the full set of resources and choices in front of budget decision makers? I think is the sort of spirit of your question, and one that we're happy to keep talking about.
Thank you. That was much more articulately stated.
Well, I think Deputy Director Panucci, did you have some?
I was just going to add to your first point, Councilmember Nelson. Thank you, Chair Mosqueda, Ali Panucci of your council central staff, for the record. That I just wanted to confirm that I think what you were getting to is that much of the recommendations are memorializing changes in practice that we have been implementing under the leadership of Director Dingley and Chair Mosqueda for the last several years. And so this is an opportunity to both memorialize what we are currently doing and to set direction for continued improvement in the work we're doing together on the budget and fiscal monitoring.
Yeah, that's great. And then to your point around transparency for some of the general fund adjacent revenue sources is, I think, the term we used last budget. I agree that would be helpful to see in our reporting documents. We made that a little bit easier to do, a lot easier to do with Jumpstart. For example, we created the Jumpstart siloed fund, so we would have the ability to accurately see how much money was coming in and how much was available for Jumpstart priorities last year or the year before. So that was the similar intent of what you just described, so that we would accurately see what was coming in, so we could appropriate accordingly. And I'd be interested in working with central staff on ways to formalize those reporting processes as well. I think I would just say also that if I had a magic wand, and I'm sure that if central staff and the city budget's office had a magic wand as well, and we could do some of these things overnight, the end goal for me would be to have a budget bill. And for colleagues who've worked in Olympia or have lobbied in Olympia, I think that it is helpful to see a budget bill each year that shows a red line of what was included in the previous budget, what is either being enhanced or reduced by, striking out an actual budget document that just evolves year over year. And that way we can see what's being added, if it's a proviso, a statement of legislative intent. The ultimate goal would be to have a 800-page budget bill as one cohesive document that just is updated every year, so we can see baseline investments versus what has been the tradition in the city, is my understanding, of having summary documents for each investment or budget for each of the departments. And I'm not impugning any of the great work that is done by city budget office, our departments, our central staff, with helping to make sure that those budget documents are really well described and have as much detail as possible. There's no hiding of the ball here or intentional information being left out. It's just the process that we've historically had has been to update those one-pagers, if you will, or summary documents, if you will. And that is just a different approach than the one that I think would be more preferable at some point in the future, of having a large, complete summary budget bill for general fund operations, capital investments, and any sort of transportation investments. So, 3 budget bills, if you will, just like the state legislature does, so that we can see year over year how the budget is evolving.
That would be helpful.
One day that may happen, but I understand that that might be a ways out because of the existing systems that we have. The second thing is, I would very much love to see us do everything that we can to move towards this 6-year financial planning or 6-year outlook for fiscal notes. That is part of what I'm asking central staff to look into as part of the takeaway recommendations here. But ideally, we would have a fiscal note that looks at the 2-year budgetary impact and then the 6-year possible impact. So we can see 3 biennial cycles in the future, what the impact would be to the city. And that way we can start planning for it. There's some really incredible programs that I know might have large price tags. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do them. We just need to plan for them and be cautious about the upfront costs. So those are 2 of the things that I'd love to see. And then I see Councilmember Herbold. Thank you so much for joining us, Vice Chair Herbold, and I'll turn it to you in a second. Just in terms of visionary statements as well, one thing that I know City Budget Office is working very hard on right now, and just want to, for the purpose of transparency and discussion, highlight for the community and my colleagues, is I would absolutely love to see us have that real-time data that I know is so important for CBO to have as well, about whether or not departments are underspending, how quickly they're encumbering funds that have been deployed in the budget. And that way we have a better sense going into the fall budgeting process where there is potential surplus funding in certain categories and how we can adjust for that instead of assuming that there will be surplus funding in various categories. That real-time expenditure is something that I know our director has been interested in building the systems for, and we will continue to work on that. And anything that we can do to move us in that direction would be greatly appreciated in statute. I also want to just say a huge kudos to the CBO team, Adam Schaefer, who's been leading up the reporting requirements that we have asked for related to the American Rescue Plan Act or Seattle's Rescue Plan. We have monthly reports that show us the expenditures, the funding that's been encumbered, and what is left to be spent. That, I think, is a great example for how we could potentially move towards our traditional or regular budgeting within the city so that we all have a good sense of if the money is out there. And on that point, our congressional members have applauded the city for that type of reporting out. Every time I get one of those reports, I send it to our liaisons in the congressional team as well, so that they can brag about the ways in which Seattle has accurately accounted for the funds, but more importantly, spent the funding as Congress intended. So huge kudos from our congressional delegation every time we send those out. Vice Chair Herbold, please go ahead.
Thanks so much. My apologies for my late arrival. My staffer, Christina Kasuvas, has been monitoring and mentioned to me that two of the areas of interest I have were not covered. So I'm going to take advantage of the remaining time here. Chair Mosqueda, you may have, when you're discussing surplus funds, may have covered this, but I think I just want to ask the question maybe a little bit differently. Just wondering, are there recommendations that would give council a way to identify underspend as underspend is sort of developing, I think, for lack of a better word, instead of just simply seeing it appropriated in legislation the following year? So is there a way that we can know maybe each quarter or towards the end of the year before budget, there are different options here, but if we can know an underspend projection and just have that transparency, because currently those underspend dollars are just going into the next year's budget. That's one question. The second question is my long time interest in reporting on vacant positions in each department. I know that CBO and central staff have been working to try to develop improvements to reporting and perhaps technology that might make it possible in the future. Just wondering if you could provide an update on this work. It's, I think, very challenging from a budgeting perspective to know that departments have funded vacant positions that they don't necessarily anticipate filling. And again, that's just information that we really need to know as the body that deliberates and endorses the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Herbold. I'll start, and then maybe on the vacancies, hand it to you, Director Dingley, and for anything else you want to add. I'll say in general, the area that of our recommendations intended to work on this is the financial monitoring section. That it is, as I mentioned earlier, it is still nascent, but this regular process of right now the executive teams getting together quarterly, looking at reports, tracking variances, is giving CBO a way to see citywide sooner where are those underspends happening. Is that, we central staff can see it from a raw data perspective, but we don't have the information that informs, is that vacant because it's not going to be filled, or is it vacant and going to be spent in the next quarter, those kinds of things. Our hope is that pretty soon this year, central staff is more deeply engaged in those conversations so we can start to both inform how that works and be getting some access to this data. Ultimately, it is this investment in the financial monitoring program that could lead to citywide reports on a monthly, on a quarterly, sort of whatever the right cadence is, that provides transparency both to the executive and council about that data that doesn't exist right now. So that's sort of the investment area, even though I don't have sort of a tool to give you answers for the supplemental this week, as you might like. Dr. Dingley, what would you like to add?
Yeah, thanks, Director Handy. I think Esther covered it well. I think what has surprised me about this work is how much it is about culture shift rather than technology. And technology is, of course, necessary and wonderful, but so much of this is about how we set expectations, how we manage those expectations. And it's going to take a lot longer than you heard Chair Mosqueda and Director Handy allude to this earlier, a lot longer than I think any of us had initially thought to get to the point, the end state that you're describing, but we're very excited to get to that end point. The second part of your question was around positions and how can we better get greater transparency around positions. As you well know, and we've all been collectively frustrated by, the city does not position-based budget. Fortunately, we had the foresight to think about in our human capital replacement project that is happening in our human resources department that's going to be implemented at the beginning of next year, so Q1 2024, we are going to have the ability to sync up the dollars with the positions in the budget. So all three of those systems will talk to each other. So I am as nerdy can get in excitement about being able to do that. Again, that's going to take yet more culture shift and change management as we move toward that. So it won't be a light switch that'll flip on to be able to make sure that all those data are usable, et cetera, et cetera. But we are definitely headed in that direction. I'm very encouraged by all the work I've seen to date. So I just want to real quick, if you'll indulge me, thank my team who's been engaged in this work. Zach Kuntz, who's been instrumental in standing up the monitoring program, Jamie Carnell in City Finance, who's been working on the HCM replacement along with Amanda Grumbach and others. And then I also just real quick, while I'm on the shout out train, thank William Chen, who's the lead of the Seattle Rescue Plan team, for all of the incredible monitoring work that his team has done to really set that standard, as well as Jeanette Blankenship, Caleb Wagner, everybody on the Trisha Patek, all the folks on the CBO team who have contributed to all the work that we're discussing today, because it's really theirs that Chair Mosqueda mentioned. It's in addition to all the other core work that they're doing. So I'm very grateful for all of their contributions.
Excellent. So Central Staff, do you have any thoughts about next steps on this?
Appreciate your direction, Chair Mosqueda. We can get to work on a resolution as you outlined that works on recommendations 1, 2, 3, and 8, and we'll collaborate with the City Budget Office to get their input on sort of what that looks like to supersede the current resolution. And there are a couple other pieces like the change to the budget director's authority that are appropriate to go in code. We can make that amendment. We can work on that legislation to be before the council here before budget, as well as exploring the idea of creating a fiscal transparency section in the code, and talk about what might fit in there. So happy to get to work on those work products and be collaborating with you on a committee schedule to bring them back.
Great. That sounds good. We will definitely see you then again at some of our upcoming meetings, and appreciate that you have done so much work. So please thank the work group that was convened from the executive and the legislative branch to come up with these recommendations. With that, we will go ahead and say thank you and move on to the next item on the calendar here. I do want to just double check with our colleagues. We have this meeting scheduled till noon. I want to make sure that that time was held on your calendar too. Okay, you feeling okay about that? I'm seeing a nod from Councilmember Nelson in the room. And we have 2 more sections basically of our agenda. One is to do items 4 and 5 together, and that would be a quick preview of some excuse me, let me do that again. One would be to do item number 3 as a standalone, and that would be a quick preview from central staff on the fiscal note enhancements that I alluded to earlier. And the second thing is to include items 4 and 5 together to really allow for us to start a preview of the supplemental budget. So I'm thinking with central staff's encouragement here, we might just do item number 3 as like a 10-minute preview, and then try to use the last hour for supplemental budget discussion. Would that work?
Chair Mosqueda, I might suggest we just postpone the fiscal note enhancements discussion or move it to the end if time allows. It's going to be difficult for us to compress that much with the content Tom has prepared for today. So maybe we do items 4 and 5 first, and if there's time to take up the fiscal note discussion at the end, that would be great. If not, we can work with you and your team to find another time to have this conversation. And I think we just got some initial direction from you in terms of overall what you're looking for in legislation to memorialize in code or resolution some of the components, and we can meet with other committee members before we prepare anything related to the fiscal note.
That sounds good to me. And also please take a chance to look at the materials from central staff. I want to thank Tom Mikesell, who has been really helping to spearhead this conversation with Ali Panucci, our deputy director, and myself in our office. There is just a quick preview. Like there's so many wonderful things about our fiscal note and so many things that could be added to make it an actually, let me see, long-term projection of the cost, as I noted before. So clearly my interest is in outlining the existing biennial impacts as we look at legislation, but also doing a preview of any possible projections for the next 3 biennium to come. So that would be a 6-year fiscal note outlook, if at all possible. I know that there's some limitations on what we can do with our existing systems, but that is the goal that I'd love to head into, and the materials are available on our agenda here today. We will package this item with the previous item next time, and we'll come back and ask for an update on language related to both of them, if that sounds good. Okay. Colleagues, then I'm going to go ahead and have item number 4 and 5 read into the record together, and we will move forward.
Agenda item number 4 and 5, Council Bill 120617 and Council Bill 120618, an ordinance relating to funding from the non-city sources, and an ordinance which adopted the 2023 budget for briefing, discussion, and possible vote.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was items 5 and 6. 5 and 4. 5 and 4. Great. Okay, so the information is in front of us. We're going to have a presentation from central staff as well. Thank you again to Deputy Director Panucci and Eden Sisik from central staff for being here with us. Colleagues, I want to make sure you know that this is not slated for a vote today. We're going to have a preview today and have this for sure on our August 2nd agenda. And if needed, we'll hold time later in August as well. But my hope is that we could get some feedback on the initial supplemental budget. We're going to take a little bit of time to fully understand how some of the money has been moved around in the proposed supplemental. And we will have this on our August 2nd agenda as well. And I'm going to really just turn it directly over to central staff to walk us through their analysis so far. As I noted, there was a 15-page memo that corresponded with this supplemental budget. So I hope folks have had a chance to read through that. If you haven't, it's attached to today's agenda as well. And we can always take some time to meet with central staff in between this meeting and next meeting to go through any questions that you might have. And as we go through, I'll be highlighting just a very few number of pre-introductory changes that we made to the budget. And again, there is a deadline of Monday, July 24th for additional amendments. As you hear the presentation today, if something comes to mind, please do get in touch with central staff by Monday so that they can start working on any possible amendments that you'd like to see. Again, supplemental budget does need to be self-balancing as you consider any possible amendments given where we're at in the budget process. Okay. Thank you so much, Deputy Director Panucci and Eden, for being here with us. I'll turn over to you to walk us through this presentation.
Thank you, Chair Mosqueda. I am going to pass it over to Eden to lead us through the discussion today. I just want to note for people watching at home, the presentation and the previous presentation we just walked through will be posted to the agenda after the fact if it's not on there now. And also just note that we are taking up in order of the memo preparation. And so item 5 will be discussed first and item 4 second. They're both read in simultaneously, but just noting that. And also just note for the committee members, we do have other central staff members on the line who have subject matter expertise in some of the specific items that are included in the supplemental budget, the mid-year supplemental budget ordinance. And so you may see them pop in to help address questions if it goes beyond sort of the information Eden and I have available at our fingertips. And with that, I will pass it over to Eden.
Yeah. Good morning, council members and staff. Eden Sisik with your central staff, and to build off the introduction, we'll be discussing Council Bill 120617, which would provide authority for city departments to accept and appropriate the expenditure of grant revenues from non-city sources, and Council Bill 120618, which would amend the budget through supplemental changes. And there were 2 central staff memos sent on Monday, as we just mentioned, as the chair just mentioned, both are attached to the agenda materials, and this PowerPoint will cover the high points from that memo. And I'll do my best to reference back to the memo as I'm able. And I have some of my awesome central staff colleagues on the line to help answer questions regarding items covered in the presentation today. in the memo or the ordinance themselves. So we can go to slide 1, please. So referencing to page 1 in the memo, this table tracks all of the budget changes that are brought to council and through the Finance and Housing Committee during the year. Earlier in the year, the council received carry forward legislation, which makes up the bulk of the second column, the adjustments as of July 1st column. So there were 8 other pieces of legislation passed to date, which are covered in the first 2 pages of the memo. So I won't go over those in the interest of time. However, as the table shows, through July 1st, there are these various legislation pieces increase the general fund budget by 12% compared to the 2023 adopted budget. And there's a 33% increase in all other funds combined, resulting in a $2.1 billion change, going from the adopted budget of $7.4 billion to about $9.5 billion, which is a 28% overall budget increase. Next slide, please. So as Deputy Director mentioned, I'll present the council bills in reverse order. So we'll discuss 120618, the mid-year supplemental ordinance first, followed by Council Bill 120617, which is the grants ordinance. So this is the second comprehensive supplemental adjustment ordinance. Comprehensive meaning a package of adjustments that affects multiple funds and multiple department budgets, which is what we're talking about today for both of the bills before you today. And also referencing back to the state law, which provides the authority for the supplemental adjustment process to take place. The city is permitted to make mid-year appropriation changes to positions, capital, operating budgets for items that are to have been assumed to have been unforeseeable when the budget was adopted. And in terms of the overall impact on the city budget proposed in the supplemental bill is actually it's a $139 million decrease. However, the appropriation decrease is primarily due to technical changes, which abandon $230 million of capital budget appropriations. And almost all of this is in Seattle Public Utilities and Seattle City Light. Again, these changes are purely technical and do not free up financial resources for use on other budget purposes. Just to explain it quickly, essentially the City Light and Public Utilities appropriate their full budget during the budget process, which is different than how most other departments do it. And then they receive a carry forward due to the automatic carry forward of capital appropriations, which essentially is double counting. So they abandon that carry forward as part of this mid-year supplemental. So after adjusting for these technical reductions, this bill would increase the budget by $86.8 million across all funds. And this is all detailed on page 7 of the memo. So as proposed, this council bill would increase the 2023 general fund budget by $16.9 million, which is the net effect of general fund spending proposals, abandonments of carry forward grant backed appropriations, and transfer of resources to non-general funds. However, after accounting for the executive estimated general fund revenue increase of $3.3 million, and then if we exclude the $14 million unappropriated general fund planning reserves transfers to the judgment and claims fund, which I'll describe shortly, there would be a positive net change to the general fund balance of $359,000. Basically, so this bill would increase the general fund balance by $359K. So this table provides a summary of funding for general fund appropriations. The funding source, and then categorizes them as one-time or ongoing, and only includes general fund increases, which make up that total of $16.9 million. So individual transfer items that are net zero to the general fund are not part of this table, but all general fund items are itemized and described in table 2 of the memo that starts on page 3. So as the table shows, the bulk of the general fund increase is paid from the executive managed planning reserves, and the remainder funded from new revenue or reimbursements and reductions to other general fund appropriations. And so you can also see that 4.4 million of the proposed changes include ongoing appropriations that would be that would likely extend beyond 2023. So if adopted, 2024 and future years, general fund departmental budget would increase by $4.4 million. And of that amount, approximately 2.6 million is revenue backed. So the net ongoing fiscal impact would be $1.8 million. And put another way, the projected $224 million operating deficit beginning in 2025-2026 biennium, which was presented on May 17 during the general fund balancing discussion, would increase to about 226 million. So this increase is primarily due to the increase in insurance premium costs. But going through the line items individually, the largest impact to the general fund is the $14 million transfer from the unappropriated general fund planning reserves to pay for judgment and claim settlement costs, which are higher than originally anticipated for the year. And the planning reserves are intended to be budgeted in the future, but are not yet part of the budget. So because they're not appropriated, this reads as an overall increase in general fund spending compared to 2023 adopted budget, which is a point that we just made during the work group discussions. And this was item number 8 in that previous report. So, and then we have the downtown activation plan. So $2.2 million increase in Office of Economic Development to implement a one-time expansion of cleaning services and to provide continued support for community engagement, strategic planning, and project delivery of the downtown activation plan. And these appropriations are balanced by other reductions in general fund spending included in the bill, part of the $4.5 million line item. So if these investments are not a priority for the council, these funds could be redirected for other one-time uses in 2023. And I'll provide additional details on this later in the presentation. Next, we have the $525,000 increase in Seattle Police Department to enhance police presence, safety, and protection of the public, businesses and property owners within the business improvement area boundaries. The term of this contract was from July 1st, 22 to June 30th of this year. And the BIA will reimburse the city for these services in 2023. And we have the $256,000 increase in Seattle Police Department again for reimbursement of personnel costs for the Executive Director of Strategic Initiatives position. So the incumbent employee is participating in a Department of Justice fellowship through the rest of the year. So their reimbursement amount will be used to fund the position backfill until the incumbent returns to SPD at the end of this year. And then the $4.5 million of reductions, which partially offsets the increases in this table, include abandonment of grant authority that's no longer necessary, and funding shifts from general fund to other funding sources, which are described on page 5 of the memo and include 2 CIP projects. I'll cover those projects. So $1.7 million decrease in Seattle Public Library for the installation of air conditioning at the northeast and southwest branches. And I think it's important to note that this funding was originally added by the council in 2022 as part of the adopted budget as a climate adaptation measure. And in 2022, the executive instructed Seattle Public Libraries to hold the spending of this $1.7 million for air conditioning as one of many spending holds on the general fund appropriations identified as necessary to end to 2022 imbalance. So because of this hold, in August of 2022, council allocated $1.7 million of Jumpstart funding in the legislation that allocated Jumpstart Green New Deal funds via an ordinance. So the administrative hold limited the council's ability to repurpose those funds, which should be considered if administrative spending holds are proposed by the executive in the future. And then the other CIP item decrease is an SDOT for the Center City Connector project. $2.4 million of transportation network company revenue was appropriated toward this in the 2022 adopted budget, and $2.3 million of unspent appropriations carried forward into 2023. So this proposed decrease is primarily due to reallocation of TNC revenue by the executive to cover budget shortfalls in other programs, and partly due to TNC revenue coming in lower than expected. Separately, the executive proposes increasing funding by $1.1 million for Center City Streetcar project development, which I'll cover shortly later in the presentation. So those are all one-time appropriations now going into ongoing general fund increases. 911 call data recorder integration, $1.5 million increase in community safety and communication.
Ed, and maybe before you get into that ongoing appropriations, we should take some questions on the one-time subtotal. And I'll also note that we have slides that correspond with many of these items. So for example, I'm going to hold some of the questions that I have about the downtown activation plan for slides that are coming up. I do have a question about some of the insurance costs that you noted, so I'll ask that now. But before I get to my question, I see Councilmember Herbold has her hand raised. If folks have questions about the one-time appropriations that don't have corresponding slides, let's go ahead and ask those questions now. Councilmember Herbold.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, there might be a corresponding slide. It is related to the downtown activation plan. It is the funds being used for it, specifically funds being taken from the 2 library projects. So if my inquiry is more about that, is that appropriate now?
I think let's hold that for slide number 6, and just a preview for Eden as well. I have a similar question that I'll be asking related to the funding that was originally appropriated for hygiene services. So maybe we can ask those 2 questions as we get to slide 6.
Absolutely. Can I ask a quick question about the 911 excise tax revenue?
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Great. But again, if there's a separate slide, I'm happy to hold it.
I will cover that shortly as well.
All right.
All
I'll
right.
just sit back and wait. Thank you.
Good preview. Okay, great. I will jump in with this question because I don't think there's a corresponding slide. So here you mentioned the factors around the insurance increase, the insurance costs that the city is bearing. I am interested in anything that we can do to get clarification on what those factors are. I know that this is a budget discussion, and sometimes we include policy directive via SLY and provisos here, but I'm really concerned about not having additional transparency about the factors going into increasing insurance costs. and the attributable departments. We know that from national coverage of other jurisdictions, there is a significant increase in costs related to policing and transportation issues. And we saw similar, I think, public reports last year when we looked at the increased costs. I think it was associated with judgment and claims. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to get more transparency around the costs related to insurance and attributable departments. Is there any initial thoughts you have about that?
Yeah, so the 1.5 million increase in fine in general for higher insurance premium costs. So we requested a breakdown and additional information on what makes up this increase, and are waiting on additional details from the executive. Though our initial research suggests that this $1.5 million is slightly overestimated. And these are not health-related costs. They're for things such as property insurance, excess liability, fiduciary, etc. And the two items that are primarily driving this increased costs are the property insurance and excess liability. Those came in a lot higher than expected.
What are the two things?
Property insurance and excess liability.
Excess liability. Okay.
Excess liability is like insurance on insurance, like insurance policy on top of the insurance policy. If your original insurance policy exceeds the limits.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for asking for that additional transparency and clarity. And let's revisit this at the next meeting as well. And maybe I'll chat with central staff about if there's anything that we need to include in this budget specific to the excess liability costs. I'm guessing that that is the same issue that other jurisdictions across the country are seeing as well, related to police misconduct payouts. That's something that's been a national trend in the news over the last year plus, on local jurisdictions having to absorb more costs for their insurance given these violations or purported violations, and the need for the jurisdictions to respond to the issues that have been imposed on communities. So I would very much like to see us have an analysis of whether that is playing out here in the city of Seattle as well. And thank you for already putting the feeler out to the departments to better understand why this cost is increasing.
We'll follow up on that.
Thanks so much. Deputy Director Panucci.
Yeah, I would just, on that point, we are continuing to ask for more details to better understand what's driving these costs, but I will say, well, those are the two top. It really is primarily the property insurance. It looks like excess liability is like less than $100,000 swing based on the data we have available right now. And so it is primarily property insurance, but we will get more details on what it is that is driving those costs and follow up, as well as additional details on if this isn't over more than what is necessary to pay for insurance in 2023. We'll share those details with the council members in the coming days.
Okay, great. I think we can go. Oh, Councilmember Nelson, please go ahead.
When you say property, are you talking about damage to property? Is that what's driving it up, as small businesses have said in other contexts? Or is this just sort of normal across the board? It's a national trend.
Ed, I don't know if you have much to add here. It is, we have a line that says property insurance, and I think it is the city's property, but we will get clarity on that and follow up with you, Councilmember.
Right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, next slide, please.
We're still on this slide.
Oh, you're right. Let's go on to the second half of the slide.
Items, yeah.
Then slide.
Okay, so the $1.5 million increase in Community Safety and Communication Center to update 911 call data recorder integration with computer aided dispatch and radio network. Don't know much about that. This project would upgrade the CSCC's recording technology and integrate it with a radio network to which King County public safety agencies are in the process of transitioning already. And the upgrade would be consistent with similar recent upgrades at SPD and Seattle Fire Department. And this funding would be from the city's 911 excise tax revenues, which are held in escrow by King County and dispersed as requested and permissible by statute. And we already covered the insurance cost piece, so nothing else to add to that. And the other CSCC items is the $1.1 million increase to support call taker salaries and consultant costs related to CSCC's establishment as an independent department. Previously, the time needed to onboard a new CSCC call taker was 6 to 9 months. So the 2023 range has been 3 to 6 months. So the department's projected vacancy savings are significantly lower. And the request also includes funding for a consultant that will examine CSCC technology and staffing needs. And this funding, the same as 911 call center integration, would be from the city's 911 excise tax revenues. Again, a full list of general fund items and supplemental are described on page 3 through pages 7 of this memo. Positions. So in addition to appropriation changes, this council bill would revise approved position totals across several city departments to add 81 positions, and then 90% of those, this add is in SDOT, Community Safety and Communication Center, and Seattle Police Department. I'll cover those three in a little bit of detail for each. So starting with SDOT's 56 FTEs, none of them require additional appropriations. 39 FTEs are to complete delivery of the Move Seattle levy projects. And so these positions include new construction crew and project management staff that would sunset upon the expiration of the levy. Again, no additional appropriations are requested as the positions will deliver on existing budgeted projects. And however, if the levy is renewed in the future, extending these positions could be considered and is subject to legislative approval. Then we have 11 sunsetting positions. They sunset in 3 years to staff curb ramp and utility restoration work in the right of way. The 2023 adopted budget includes $2.2 million for this program, which is reimbursable from Seattle Public Utilities and Seattle City Light as a 3-year pilot relying on term limited positions. Therefore, no additional appropriations are requested for this either. And then lastly, in SDOT, we have 6 FTEs to convert temporary positions to permanent positions. These positions are currently filled and support the Transportation Operations Division and the Finance and Administration Division. No additional appropriations are requested here, and ongoing funding is included in SDOT's 2024 endorsed budget. Moving to CSCC's proposed addition of 10 positions, which would support the implementation of the dual dispatch pilot program, including staffing the program on an ongoing basis and providing the basis for the evolution of the current CSCC into the civilian assisted response engagement care department. These positions are funded via transfer from an ongoing finance general reserve established for this purpose. And lastly, we have 6 FTEs in SPD, none of which require additional appropriations at this time, including 4 positions in the public disclosure unit that would be filled later this year and are funded by savings from civilian position vacancies. According to the executive, these positions are needed because public disclosure requests have grown in complexity and number in recent years. It went from 8,000 to 12,000 per year. Department staff have indicated that public disclosure staff are currently averaging 80 hours of overtime per week to keep up with the workload demands. And then there's also two strategic advisor, two positions to assist with SBD's recruitment and retention initiatives. These positions would be added and immediately filled with employees that are currently working in the temporary positions. And additional details on these FTEs ads are covered on pages 8, 9, and 10 of the memo.
Thank you.
So
Eden.
moving to the next, go ahead, Ali, sorry.
Sorry, Eden, I just want to flag, I think Councilmember Herbold, this might be a good time to ask about the 911 revenue source, because I don't think we touch on that again in that presentation. Is that correct, Eden? Okay,
Right.
I just need to pause here for you to have the opportunity. We also do have Ann Gorman on the line to help if we need additional details.
Really appreciate that. Madam Chair, may I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks. So I appreciate the reminder that this the excise tax revenue is held in escrow by King County until requested. And I do think, if I'm asking this question out of turn because we're getting a report on it, there may be a slide around this issue, but I'm wondering, do we know how much in total is available to the city? And do we have a good explanation or comprehensive explanation of what the allowed uses are for this revenue?
I will defer to my colleague Ann Gorman for this question.
Yes, thank you, Eden. Ann Gorman, Council Central staff, happy to answer that. As of a couple days ago, there was approximately $5.4 million in the city's escrow account at King County. We receive about $1 million every quarter on an ongoing basis that is anticipated to continue. And these revenues can be used to support the modernization of 911 systems and the operational costs associated with the maintenance and operation of those systems, including some salary costs. Delivery, receipt, and processing of 911 calls are the activities that are available for reimbursement from those resources. So that includes the salaries of call takers.
Thank you very much. No follow-up.
Okay, thanks. I have a question here. Well, first I want to underscore the comment that Councilmember Herbold made in our previous item on the agenda. It would be very helpful to know in real time, especially at the supplemental budget time, whether or not any of the positions that we had already allocated for in the budget had been filled or if they were sitting vacant, and if this is additional budget requests on top of already unfilled positions that the council had authorized and signed into statute by the mayor. Is there any indication that we will have access to that type of information before the first part of August for this current year?
We can certainly request that information from the executive and see if they can fill out this table and add a column that has filled versus unfilled positions, if that would be helpful.
Absolutely, because if we're being asked for additional, is it additional funding or additional position authority?
So this is asking for additional position authority, and some of these positions are majority of these positions are not asking for additional appropriations, but some are. So we can separate those out.
Okay, and the concern that I think we have collectively, and central staff has been raising this in the 3 years that I've been sitting here as chair, and I'm sure Councilmember Herbold, when you were chair as well, the concern was raised. Just authorizing position authority mid-year or at the end of the year budget process without an understanding of if existing position authorities are sitting vacant means that future budget impacts could compound, right? we are authorizing additional expenditure or authorizing additional authority in the mid-year supplementals purportedly, or, you know, that's what's being proposed. But then these positions would ostensibly be filled in addition to other positions that we've already authorized, which compounds our increased costs year over year. That's part of the reason that we end up in a situation where we have a growing gap between existing revenue and expenditures when we don't have greater clarity on what the available funding is and the expenditures for the expenditure impact over the long haul. And it's especially concerning when it comes to positions. We wouldn't want to hire somebody in a full-time permanent position for a position that's really only going to be 5 or 6 months at best. I mean, we're mid-July at this point. So I want to just flag that this is a significant number of positions, and whether or not there's additional funding being requested, it has the real impact of compounding our revenue and budget gap in the future without having a better understanding of whether or not there's positions that are already sitting empty. And that's not to take away from the work that's being proposed here. I think everybody would want to ensure that we are moving forward with serving the public's need, but the transparency issue is one that I'm trying to raise here again. I did have a specific question related to the public disclosure positions that you mentioned, Eden. I think you said that those are in the Seattle Police Department. My memory is that we added more public disclosure officer positions in the budget last fall. Are these positions that are to be added to Seattle Police Department? And were those positions in last fall's budget already filled? And I see Greg Doss from Central Staff, if you'd like to take that.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Yeah, thanks. SPD received 2 public disclosure positions, and the authority to fund those positions was salary savings in the 2021 mid-year budget, and then those positions were annualized in last fall's 2023 adopted budget, and those positions have been filled. They now have 24 total public disclosure positions on their team, their staff, and all of them are currently filled.
So they're requesting additional public disclosure positions within SPD.
Yes, the 4 in this supplemental.
And Councilmember Herbold, if you have any insight as well, of course, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, well, this is a topic that has been called out as an issue year after year. The amount of time that it takes for SPD to respond to public disclosure requests in the large backlog. We have done a number of things, both adding public disclosure positions to SPD, as well as trying to segment the public disclosure requests associated with OPA's work over at OPA, as well as asking Seattle IT to fulfill the online related requests, just like every other department in the city has Seattle IT that does the online searches rather than leaving it up to the department. So there's a number of things that we've done over the years to address this issue. I believe there was also an audit finding at one point about this issue. I think it's reasonable to conclude that there is more to do based on what we heard about the overtime hours that the public disclosure unit currently experiences on average. Eden, I thought you said 80 a week. I'm assuming that's 80 for the unit, not per person.
Correct, for the unit.
And can you remind us how many are in the unit currently?
There's 24 council members that are in the unit, including the managers.
Well, perhaps more to come on this. Thank you for that background.
Chair Mosqueda, I might suggest, since we have Greg on the on point right now, and we've gotten a bit into this issue, this is raised later in the presentation in the memo, but it may make sense just to talk about that issue right now, because it is a really excellent example of the challenges that the legislative branch has, that the council has in providing oversight, both on the budget and the position management, because these 4 positions for the public disclosure work are proposed to, they're ongoing positions that are proposed to be funded with one-time salary savings, both this year and into next year. And what that essentially means is either those, from my perspective, either those civilian positions that are currently vacant and are going to be held vacant next year are not needed, and we should be abrogating them. So this funding is freed up for an ongoing, for the ongoing public disclosure work. Or we need to be really clear, as stated on page 15 of the memo, that if at the end of 2024, those positions are, all the positions are filled, this will increase overall the SPD's budget and is contributing to the ongoing problem. And it's not to say that it isn't needed and a good idea to add those positions now. We just need to have the conversation about the trade-offs and priorities, because this is, as Councilmember Herbold and Greg was describing, this work is piling up and is needed. And so I want to flag that. And Greg, if you want to add anything to that issue, but I will also just note that Greg is working to get additional details on the impacts of holding those other civilian positions open in order to pay for these new positions, but we don't have all the details yet.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. The only thing I would add is that it's sort of a 2-part analysis at this point. I think you and your staff have made this clear that it's figuring out what one-time monies are available now in 2023, but how these positions are going to be paid for in 2024. And as you've pointed out, it will require leaving purposeful vacancies in SPD next year, and there would be work that wouldn't be getting done. And so that's a conversation, as Ali said, that will have to happen. That's an analysis that is forthcoming, and central staff will be able to have that conversation with the council soon.
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, just one last point. I'll just to put a plug in for you, what your previous point, Councilmember Mosqueda, related to the fiscal note, a longer term look in the fiscal note on some of these fiscal impacts would help us see how this impacts the long-term sustainability of the budget as you're considering these decisions.
Great, thank you. And I also think this is a great example of where if there's positions that are vacant, that the department intends to hold vacant, that are no longer needed or are not part of the near-term planning, it is okay to abrogate positions in order to put funding into other priorities, either within the department that have been identified or in other areas that the executive and the council may agree upon. And I think that that's a good way to ensure budget transparency, so that funding is not sitting there tied to positions that a department has already deemed are not going to be filled and not necessary for the current budgetary process. Another good example of the importance of having that transparent conversation and a budgetary tool of abrogation when a position is no longer needed. So more to come on this, and appreciate that you flagged this in the memo, and we will look forward to additional information on the number of positions that are sitting vacant that have been funded in last year's budget overall. And would love to, as we consider this item going forward, have a better sense of the fiscal impact, not just for this remainder of this calendar year and next year, our second component of our biennial approach here, but also for the out years as well. All right, let's move on.
Thank you, Ali. So moving on into pre-introduction changes, there are 2 of them made by the chair to highlight: sworn salary savings proviso modification and general fund support to Office of Sustainability and Environment for the Living Hotels Ordinance. So council budget action SPD 201A1 restricts the appropriations in SPD's 2023 adopted budget for sworn personnel salary and benefits to only be used to pay SPD's recruits and sworn officers. So the pre-intro modification to the proviso would authorize SPD to use sworn officer salary savings to pay unbudgeted sworn officer overtime expenses, as well as up to $815,000 to develop and integrate SPD's new online crime reporting system. The modification gives SPD flexibility to spend salary savings on these two items, but expresses the council's intent that they stay within their existing budget. So if they should not spend the funding on the new online reporting system if they think they're going to need these funds for overtime costs in 2023.
Thank you. Let's take a question from, sorry, let me ask you, are you done with that item?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Nelson, I want to recognize that you have your hand up first, but I also wanted to make sure that I recognize if this is related to the pre-introductory changes that Councilmember Herbold discussed with me. We do have two council members who brought up similar items and are very similar in nature. And we have made our best attempt to try to include language to get at the, I think, cross-section of those policy goals and budgetary goals here. And Councilmember, I'm going to recognize Councilmember Herbold first, just because it relates to the current legislation in the proposal. And then I'll recognize Councilmember Nelson because you had something very similar. Councilmember Herbold, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I first want to thank you for including my request for this pre-introduction change. This is a priority that I've been discussing with SPD Chief Diaz for some time now. There are updates to the online reporting system that are ongoing, and they were able to fund the first phase of that work within their current budget. But I think, as many of us know, community members, particularly in the CID, have been requesting language access support in the online reporting system for many, many years now. If you call the non-emergency line, an automated message in English requests callers to consider filling their reports online, although, again, the online reporting system is only available in English. The funds allow for the second phase of this project, which allows for language capabilities in that system upgrade to include the most common languages spoken in Seattle. And, you know, we just cannot have a situation where constituents are being told to use an online reporting system that is not built to be accessible to residents with limited English proficiency. We are, in doing so, just denying them to access to equitable access to public safety, and everybody deserves access to all of our services. Really appreciate that the police department has developed this project in phases to allow for funding to be made available for the second phase, and appreciate the opportunity that this proviso modification provides for that purpose. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll have some comments on the pre-introductory amendment that we made here with Councilmember Herbold in a minute, but I want to recognize Councilmember Nelson had a similar concept that she had also flagged, and I'll turn it to you for any additional comments that you'd like to make on this one and the item that you were thinking about too, Councilmember Nelson.
Sure. Thank you very much for including this, because this is an issue that I started to bring up with central staff in January or February, that it was clear that the proviso imposed by council last year was going to prohibit the use of salary savings on on expenses that are really important right now for Seattle Police Department. And so it's clear that they were going to be going over their overtime budget, and I am glad now that so Councilmember Herbold and I came to the same place. Our office has been working with her office as well on this, but basically my original idea was just lift the proviso and let them spend the salary savings on emergent needs. And it turns out that overtime and this reporting tool ended up taking up all that money. So the end result is the same. And I just appreciate the work with Councilmember Herbold's office, and also you putting this in so that we don't have to have this discussion later in the year, because it is very much needed right now. So I appreciate this going forward.
Thank you so much. I will start by thanking Councilmember Herbold, and thank you, Councilmember Nelson, as well, for flagging the concept. I wanted to include the language related to overtime expenses for this two-step, multi-step process to create the web-based incidents for the 12 lower incident types. And phase 2 of the project is going to integrate the form to make sure that it is available for the most commonly spoken languages, as the council members have described: Chinese, Spanish, Vietnamese, Somali, Amharic, Korean, and Tagalog. And we included a partial proviso lift because I think it's still important that we ensure that there is the monitoring of SPD spending to ensure that it aligns with the council priorities. This is now the 3rd year that we have asked for greater transparency and assurance that the overtime prevention strategies and the partnership opportunities that exist be deployed so that fewer hours are needed for overtime. Given that Councilmember Herbold has spoken to some of those strategies that we would like the department to deploy, and has been monitoring some of those strategies as chair of the committee, happy to offer deference about the need for this proviso lift, and given its cross section with trying to ensure that there's greater language access and transparency, it seemed like it was worthy to include. I will say, I continue to have concerns, though, about the pattern of having to additionally authorize overtime. This is the 4th time we are authorizing additional overtime. We have been, I think, explicit through policy and our partnership that we want to reduce hours for overtime. We have done this by fully funding the hiring plan. The council has tried to ensure that that hiring plan and retention plan has been fully funded, so that we don't continue to see overtime hours used at the rates that they are. And I think in addition to what the chair of public safety has done in the partnership with the department, we want to make sure that we're explicitly clear that we do want these parameters to be adhered to so that overtime spending can be reined in. And I know that we are all eagerly anticipating some additional information from the department on emphasis patrols based on that statement of legislative intent that we sponsored in last year's biennial budget. We have questions and concerns about how that exacerbates overtime use, and looking forward to receiving the information to ensure that we have greater transparency and information about whether or not those emphasis patrols are doing what folks want to see, which is increased community safety, or if those dollars could be spent on other interventions that don't exacerbate the need to use overtime funds. So those are just some of the things I would say. Obviously, this is included because as chair, I support the efforts here to try to make sure that we are being flexible on the overtime dollars that are being requested. There's transparency on the why. And the need for language access is something that I agree with, but I want to underscore, I think, the ongoing comments that this council has made via the budget statements and the statements of legislative intent that we really collectively want to rein in on those overtime costs. Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the capability of the online reporting tool, because this is being able to report incidents more easily will help small businesses just register what they're experiencing out there. And then I just wanted to follow up on something that you just said, because I agree that it's untenable to always have to be authorizing more overtime when they go past their budget. I think that maybe this fall, instead of provisoing salary savings, it might be good to just indicate that salary savings can be used for overtime, because it's clear that staffing needs probably won't be solved until, for a few years. And I don't believe that the use of overtime is necessary because of emphasis patrols. My understanding is that they're still down 400 or so officers in service, and they're short-staffed in every precinct, pretty much every shift. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's not like they're using officers for extra emphasis patrols. It's just that there are really extreme staffing needs, and allowing them to pay their officers for the work performed, I think, is important.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this item? Okay, well, thank you for, yes, Councilmember Herbold, please go ahead.
I just want to say I don't disagree with Councilmember Nelson's larger point that the staffing challenges of the department are significantly driving overtime costs. But I also just want to say for the public record that emphasis patrols are by definition overtime. So that is what an emphasis patrol is. It is an officer on overtime. And as we've learned from the staffing reports that we receive from SPD, that is one of the drivers among others, including, as Councilmember Nelson said, the reduction in officers in every precinct.
Thank you so much for that context. All right, let's move on to the second item that was introductory change.
All right. So we have $50,000 general fund increase to Office of Sustainability and Environment for the Living Hotels Ordinance, which would support SEPA's work and other departmental costs incurred preparing the Living Hotels Ordinance. And this ordinance would develop standards ensuring the future of Seattle's hotel industry is built upon sustainable construction and operations. And the legislation would use the Living Building Challenge and climate incentive agreements as the tools to establish new environmental standards in the lodging sector. And the increase would reduce the net change to the general fund balance of $359,000 described previously. It would reduce that to $309,000. I'm sorry, I see Councilmember Nelson's hand. Is that an old hand?
That's an old
Yeah,
one.
no, I have a question about this
Oh, you
item.
do? Okay. Well, before we go to questions, I'd like a chance to describe it. Do you have, are you done with your comments?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So let me describe this just a little bit, and then I'll take some questions on this. I am excited about the ability to move forward on a concept that has been in the works for a little over a year, but is being it's being currently discussed right now within the departments. And we just wanted to provide the opportunity to fuel and support some of that work, especially from our community partners that have been working with SDCI and with what is the Environmental Justice Office called? Anybody?
Office of Sustainability and Environment.
Office of Sustainability and the Environment, OSE and SDCI have been in good conversation about some of the work that they have been trying to do to enhance some of our living building policies out there. I wanted to take a chance to further those conversations. If funding was a barrier to doing any of the environmental impact assessments that were taking place, we wanted to put in a hold so that the legislative branch was clearly communicating to the executive branch our support for that ongoing work that the departments are doing. So I want to flag for folks a few things. One, this is a placeholder. And I anticipate that I will be coming back to you all with some amended language to include for this item based on feedback that we've received from Office of Sustainability and the Environment, SCCI, and some community partners. There's some really good work that is happening currently within SDCI on living building language. And so if there's a way for us to enhance or further that analysis that they are doing in partnership with Office of Sustainability and the Environment, I would be very much interested in making sure that they didn't have any financial barriers to furthering that analysis and policy development. So number one, this is a hold until we can get some additional feedback from the executive office about the work that they are currently doing within the departments. Number two, this is a really exciting, like groundbreaking policy that they are embarking upon. And as we consider the environmental impacts assessments of looking at living building standards, I want to center us on the fact that this is really about creating opportunity for the city to lead on green policy, green development strategies. We know, for example, that hotels, when they're created, they have much higher rates of energy use, water use, and as we authorize additional creation of buildings in the city, specifically buildings that have high energy consumption, it's a good opportunity for us to think about additional standards that we would like to impose to ensure that buildings of the future comply with helping us create a livable future for this planet. So more to come on this, but there's a number of reasons that hotels specifically are being looked at. And I also want to recognize that we've received some feedback post publishing this in that further the discussions that we had already been having with the departments, but I think offer a slightly modified way that we could move forward this work in partnership with SDCI and OSE that is slightly enhanced from here. But the concept is to help take away any barriers that might exist for us to move forward this year with helping the living building standards really be concretized and have a foothold in future policy discussions. So anything that we can do that we can do as the legislative branch and as I as budget chair for pre-introduction can do to ensure that we're taking away any financial barriers is something that I'd be very interested in doing. And again, we will be following up with some modified language based on feedback that we've received from SDCI, OSE, and probably including our partners with public utilities as well. So I see our public utility chair, is right? That's the
City Light.
City Light. Okay. City Light is you. Councilmember Peterson has public utilities. So more conversation to come there. So I see two hands. Councilmember Nelson, Councilmember Herbold, and please recognize that this is still in development with the departments.
Well, it seems you make it sound like there's a lot of talk going on between departments, but I'm vice chair of the Sustainability and Renters' Rights Committee. I'm on land use, chair of City Light, and the first time I've heard about this policy is through some of those form emails coming in. So it does seem strange to me that we are allocating money for a SEPA analysis for a policy that hasn't been discussed in committee. I appreciate that you might know a lot about it. I'm a big fan of the Living Building Pilot Project, which is a program, which is an incentive program to achieve sustainability measures that are beyond the LEED standards. So I am interested in learning more about this. But it does seem premature to establish an expenditure for a policy that hasn't really been discussed. Now, this is for central staff. You noted in the memo that this work is still being discussed, and OSE has not yet determined if 50,000 is the right amount of funding for this work. And I think you mentioned that they haven't discussed taking on this work with the executive, which may mean that this funding will go unspent or repurposed for other uses. Again, talking about money that, transparency in budgeting and making sure that when we allocate money, it's actually getting spent. So is it premature to be funding this work given those factors as well?
Well, thank you for the question. And I would say that there is work that's currently going on within the department. So the fact that it hasn't been discussed in committee in various committees might be because it's work from previous years. SDCI is currently in the process of looking at their living building project requirements. I think that it is a good idea for us to ensure that as they look at enhancing and updating their current living building language, that they work in partnership with OSE to do so. Those two departments work together often, and we have been in conversation with some of the department directors to make sure that folks were aware that this is something that we would like to further. Again, this is funding for an analysis, so not a directive on policy development at this point, just the analysis of if we could do the environmental impact assessments that I think would help create greener buildings, more sustainability in the future. And happy to have a conversation with any of the folks that you work with within the department. We had not yet reached out to City Light, for example, on this. More we're contemplating water usage and environmental sustainability and SDCI. So happy to talk more about City Light as well.
Is it going to be an incentive program or is it mandated? And what does it have to do with operations and does it impact existing hotels?
There is an existing living buildings project language that is currently at SDCI. So it would be building upon that.
So it's an incentive program.
I am not directing them to come up with, right. I'm not directing them to come up with the policy. We want to do an environmental impact assessment. Let me just flag that we are still in conversations with the department, but I really think that the time was like yesterday, 10 years ago, to do anything that we can for the sustainability of our planet. And as our city is allowing for greater density to come in and building hotels and other buildings, we should be looking with urgency about how we incorporate this language. So given the mid-year was happening, the opportunity to include language to further this concept, I wanted to flag it here, have done so in a transparent way. We'll be coming back with language based on discussion with the departments to see what else we can do to further the concept here, just to do the analysis. I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Herbold for additional questions as well.
Not a question, just want to say I am really pleased that we are exploring this area. There is an International Green Hotel Association, but there's no certification of green hotels under that program. And they say, I mean, right on their website, they say there's no certification because of the expense associated with certification. And I just think it's really important to guard against greenwashing, and that's why I too am a big fan of the Seattle living building program. There is certification for that, and Councilmember Nelson is correct. There is an incentive built in for that program, but there's also certification that these buildings are actually meeting the standards rather than just customers having to take the hotel's word for their participation in these programs. So really appreciate the movement towards something that is confirming that hotels that are being built in our city are living up to these standards. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there hotels that have signed on to the living building? What are you referring to, Councilmember Herbold? Are you saying that there are some hotels that have signed on, or that they are saying that they are achieving sustainability, but they aren't?
I'm saying that there is a Green Hotel Association, and there are standards identified by people who are members of this association, but there is no certification that these hotels have met these standards, unlike the Green Building Program for here in Seattle, which includes a certification process.
Okay, well, maybe there can be a description of the living hotel proposal before we go forward on this. That would be helpful for me.
Well, thanks for flagging those questions. And my interest is always in trying to include as much as possible before the amendment process so that people have extra time to look at the direction that I'm interested in going. And I think that it complements the work that the city has done. As Councilmember Purple noted, existing policies out there. This policy concept has been actually part of the city's work over the past few years. And I think it's at the stage where an environmental impact assessment, ensuring that the SEPA analysis can move forward is great. So much work has been done. So let's move forward. Let's take away any budgetary restrictions that might slow down the process. That's really my goal here. And just to provide additional context here, this is really an opportunity just to ensure that there's momentum around the ability for our city to move forward on this environmental review, enhance the policy and the program development work that's already in place, given the feedback that we've received to look at the existing living building standards within SDCI. My hope is that we can accelerate that conversation and really ensure that as we talk about downtown recovery, as we talk about economic recovery, that we do so in a way that doesn't look like returning to the status quo for a number of reasons, but specifically for the health of our planet, looking at how we're supporting policy concepts with funding that allow for more equitable and greener development and a greener economy. So through that vein, I'm excited that we're having this conversation. We'll get more information from the departments about the work that they've already done on the living building project, the concept of incorporating this into the analysis or the process that the departments are going through with how they would enhance and expand that work. And if folks are saying like, I don't get it, why would we do this? Let's just look at a few facts here. We know that hotels, for example, contribute 8% of the global carbon emissions. We want to increase tourism and bring folks to the city. And we also want to ensure that we're doing so in a green way that promotes climate justice. So that's one area. We also know that there is a large number of environmental benefits of this decision to help spur more eco-conscious travelers to come to Seattle. Think about using this as a draw to this city. We know that 83% of travelers plan or prioritize where they go based on sustainability in their travel choices. And 69% of travelers expect and want more sustainable options. So we can do a few things, summarize those stats that I just said, share with you the source, and we can summarize the work that the city is already doing on the living building standards while we have further conversations with them about how they would like to see this policy enhanced. So more to come. I'm just really excited about the ability to further this work and if there are any financial barriers to try to take those away.
Well, it seems like there are, again, SEPA analysis on what is what I would like to understand better. So the baseline that we are analyzing and a description of the program as it would be implemented at the city would be helpful going forward.
Okay, great. We'll include that in a one pager as well. Okay, let's keep going.
Chair Mosqueda, I just want to do a time check because we are just getting.
Oh shoot, it's already noon. Yes.
The main issue, we probably have another, 20 minutes or so of content. So depending on your questions, that might be over or under. So just check it in.
Let me ask my colleagues because we have this item on August 2nd as well. Are folks running up to a time crunch here? Okay. Councilmember Nelson has said that she is running to a time crunch. Any additional colleagues? Would you prefer to hold this over? Okay. For my colleague who weighed in, we are going to go ahead and ask for central staff to summarize here. We didn't get to the downtown activation plan though, and I know that's important to you too, Councilmember. Do you want to do those questions and then we'll go?
I'm not able to see where other people are on their time crunch. I just had a noon, so.
Okay.
I could probably cover the downtown activation plan in 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, and then we have only a couple other slides. So I could probably do this in the next 5 or 10 minutes if you guys have time, but totally okay to postpone until August 2nd as well.
All right. But
Okay.
I'm seeing a nod over here. Colleagues, can you hang on for 5 to 10 minutes? Okay. I'm seeing nods on the screen. Thank you for that. Let's go ahead and summarize the last few slides here. And then Councilmember Nelson, if you need to log in on your earbuds, we understand too.
Okay, so this is a list of policy considerations and issues identified by central staff. So in the memo, we describe proposed spending in the mid-year and administrative changes of this plan. So I'll just cover some of the highlights and focus on the proposed spending. Well, I won't focus on the proposed spending, but the memo includes 3 pages of information on the subject. So starting on page 12. So in April this year, the mayor announced the initial components of his downtown activation plan, which is a new initiative to revitalize and reimagine Seattle's downtown. And to reiterate the point made in the memo, any spending on the downtown activation plan today should be considered in the context of the projected annual operating deficit in the general fund of about $224 million beginning in 2025, and the trade-offs of reprioritizing existing resources. So the executive has indicated that any new spending in 2024 on this initiative will likely be funded by the Jumpstart Fund as part of the economic revitalization work, which has a reserve in Finance General. So since we're likely to see new appropriations for this in the mayor's proposed 2024 mid-biennium budget adjustment, this would be a good opportunity for the council to provide policy directions for the initiative. And again, I plan on covering the new spending in detail, but I won't do that in the interest of time. And since I touched on it earlier, but the information is in the memo. But in addition to new spending, using existing appropriation authority included in the 2023 budget, the executive has redirected $1.8 million of existing general fund appropriation authority in the budget for SPUs to increase graffiti abatement services, which is an 87% increase on graffiti spending compared to the $2.1 million program for graffiti control in the adopted budget. And this is the identical to an earlier proposal that the council removed from the 2023 budget. So in the 2023 proposed budget, the executive proposed a $1.2 million increase and 3 FTEs for an expanded graffiti control and abatement program. And then during the deliberations last fall, the council approved a council budget action that removed the proposed funding and new positions for this. So the supplemental reverses that decision and advances the proposed expansion of the graffiti abatement program. And I'll just note that because the contract with Uplift Northwest is already executed and the positions have already been filled, council options are limited. Can I cover the other items on here real quick before we, or?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, great. So $1.1 million is proposed to increase in SDOT to complete a delivery assessment of the Center City streetcar connector, to update cost estimates and develop financial plan for the project, which is $250,000 of general fund and $805,000 of transportation benefit district to fund. So if this is not a priority for the council could redirect these funds for other purposes. Just want to note that transportation benefit district funds can only be used for certain transportation expenditures. We already covered the SPD position vacancy savings, but I'll just reiterate that additional general fund budget appropriations will be required if or when existing vacancies are filled alongside the newly added positions, which could increase the projected $224 million general fund deficit, which is exactly the point that you were making earlier about positions, Chair Mosqueda. And for the Jumpstart Fund, so due to continuing revenue shortfalls caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2023 adopted general fund budget relies on temporary support from the Just Start Fund to balance. And in Ordinance 126719, which provides for the temporary backfill in the 2023 budget, requires that Jumpstart transfer be reduced by the amount of any 2022 general fund ending balances, as authorized by ordinance or state law, and plan reserve amounts. So the general fund balance amount was 34 million. So the general fund financial plan information provided by CBO in May suggests that executive intends to administratively reduce the 23 transfer from the Jumpstart Fund to the general fund by an additional $4.7 million, for a total of 38.7 million. So the council could legislate the reduction required by Ordinance 126719, which is 34 million, or the higher amount of 38.7 million, to ensure that the funds are not used for other purposes. And this covers everything for the mid-year supplemental bill. The next slide would be mid-year grants.
All right, thanks so much. I'm conscious of folks' time, but I do want to take some questions. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Mosqueda. I haven't spoken the whole committee, so I did want to say thank you to central staff. This is where, I mean, central staff shines all year long, but when it comes to the budget, you really shine and help us in our separation of powers vis-a-vis the executive branch. So thank you so much for this exhaustive analysis. Appreciate also when you're talking about the deficit that you're talking about, that it's actually 2025, it's the general fund, it's not now, it's not the whole budget. So we'll have some discussions, I'm sure, in the fall, especially about that issue. So in reviewing the more than 150 requested changes in this mid-year budget supplemental, I realize there's a lot of work that's been done by our city budget office and the various departments. I appreciate that. I want to say off the bat, I do support nearly all of the proposals of the downtown activation plan. I support the expansion of graffiti abatement. There is, however, one requested change in the approved budget that stands out to me like a sore budget thumb. Item 7.6 is that proposal from the executive to spend $1 million to study the expensive First Avenue streetcar proposal, also known as the Center City Connector, which has been recently rebranded as the Cultural Connector. And as I've highlighted previously, I'm concerned that the Center City Connector streetcar proposal is becoming a mobile money pit because it would cost more to build than originally budgeted, it costs more to operate than originally anticipated, and now potentially it would cost $1 million to study it again. And when people want to get from point A to point B on that single downtown arterial, they can use a bus, they can use light rail, there's several other means of travel. And when we have so many other transportation needs across a city, including safety projects such as Vision Zero projects to protect pedestrians, I just don't understand why we would spend another dime to study what would essentially tear up that street for 2 years. And the project would end up being a downtown disruptor. This item 7.6, requesting over $1 million for the study. It's a project that's been investigated by the federal government. It's nearly $95 million short of meeting its funding goals. So even if if City Hall were to successfully convince other levels of government that this single streetcar on a single arterial is a top transportation priority, I believe this expensive, redundant project would tear up that key downtown street for 2 years. And it's just not the best use of $1 million for our transportation needs. So I'm hoping that we can use our city charter authority to amend the ordinance and potentially redirect those funds to transportation safety projects, crosswalks, sidewalks, and other things to reduce speeds on our arterials. And I look forward to collaborating with anybody else who'd be interested in such an amendment to redeploy those dollars toward pedestrian safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. Councilmember Nelson.
Well, I feel like I should defer to the chair of transportation on this, but I did have
Could
a
you get your
question about
microphone just
the
a little?
Center City Connector, which is if council does approve this funding, are there tools the council could use to require that outreach to businesses along the along First Avenue be included in the assessment? Because you know, I do think that as Councilmember Peterson just mentioned, that there will be significant construction impacts. And when I've heard talk of this project, there hasn't been an acknowledgement of those impacts on the small businesses or on the Pike Place market. And so I just would like to make sure that that outreach is conducted. And ideally, if there could be ways of helping to fund the businesses that are impacted if this project goes forward.
Thank you so much. Maybe we can take that offline and we can talk more about if
that would
there's
be
a
great.
partnership or additional directive there. Councilmember Herbold, please go ahead.
Thank you. First, I just want to signal my interest in working with you, Councilmember Peterson, on increasing funding for pedestrian safety projects. Appreciate your reference to the Center City streetcar as mobile money pit. I think there are many better uses, and pedestrian safety, I think, is one of the primary challenges of our city right now, as we heard in your committee yesterday, specifically related to very necessary equity investments in some of the parts of our city where we see the most pedestrian fatalities, bike fatalities, that are also intended to be areas that receive equity investments, but yet despite the very passionate and effective advocacy of many members of the public, as well as the District 2 council member, those investments aren't being made. So really appreciate you beginning this conversation, Councilmember Peterson. I did have a quick question about the use of funds from that the council allocated for the Northeast and Southwest Library branch investments that the council first included in the 2022 budget. It's caught up in a spending hold last year, and then we allocated, of course, Jumpstart dollars for that purpose. Can I just get clarification, understand, are those improvements to those libraries going to be made despite the fact that the dollars are being swapped, dollars that were intended for that purpose?
Councilmember Herbold, our colleague Eric McConaughey is on the line, so I'm going to invite him to try to help answer that question. But thank you, Eric.
Yep. Hello, council members. Thanks for the question. In consulting with folks in CBO and also reviewing the Seattle Public Library reports, because they report to their own board monthly, those two branches have air conditioning projects that are underway. They're looking at, I believe, completing them in this year. There are costs there that are yet to be sort of finalized, but look to be increasing. I just want to put these air conditioning projects in the context that the appropriation we're talking about is to the major maintenance CIP project for the library that would encompasses lots of other things, including air conditioning the other branches. In 2021, the library got a report from a consultant covering, I think, pretty much all the branches about air conditioning and set priorities. We know as of last fall that the first 5 or so of those priorities of different branches for air conditioning were considered either funded or underway, that sort of thing. They said at the time that with the money that was proposed in the mayor's budget, they would take up the sort of next 5 and move right on through to try to accommodate better air conditioning across the board, across all the branches. So the shorter answer is, it looks like it's underway. It looks like there's some funding sources to fund those 2 projects. Oh, I forgot to mention, they're also in the running for Federal Emergency Management Agency grants to fund these things that are yet to find out, hopefully pretty soon. So considering the number of air conditioning projects that could be funded, considering that it's a rolling a series of air conditioning priorities that the library would like to take care of, and considering that FEMA money is coming in, I'm a little bit hard pressed to say how is the library doing for all the air conditioning, because I think that's a multi-year process. For these two projects, it looks like they're underway. I will note that there's a difference of about $400,000 between what was originally appropriated in general funds by the council and the $1.7 million that we're talking about now. So there's at least a little bit of a shortfall there. And maybe I'll stop there. I threw a lot of numbers at you and I'm trying to be concise, but this is one of those things where you crack it open, you start to find more details. So I'll stop there from.
My question is just, I care about the larger efforts to
Sure.
Install air conditioners in all of the libraries, but I think my question for our purposes is just simply, are the two projects that we funded for 2 years, are they fully funded? I appreciate knowing that they're both underway. I really need to know whether or not, I'm sure Councilmember Peterson would like to know as well, whether or not they have sufficient funds to complete those projects in hand, not promise, but guaranteed funds.
My understanding is the answer is that they're looking for the grant funding that in the latest report that I read that is for the library board, that they're looking for some other funding to finish these projects because costs have escalated. I'm just trying to put that in the context of the council's decisions for funding to this CIP project last year, which was to pull some money out of that project. So I'm just sort of like trying to put in the context of your overall policy kind of.
We made a reduction
direction.
ourselves.
Yeah, I'm trying to be kind or polite or
but
about that.
I mean, we made the reduction because we were limited in our ability to make whole a budget hold that we didn't have any control over. So I think we did the best we could, given that the full funding had been scooped in the previous year. But definitely appreciate that. And Madam Chair, I have one more question, and I want to flag 2 amendments. I'll be so quick. I'll first flag the 2 amendments that I'm interested in. Understand fully that all amendments are must be self-balancing. I have received a request from the Office of the Inspector General for half-time funding for a communications and engagement specialist to help fulfill their mission to meaningfully apply a racial equity lens to its work. I've got more detail about that position, happy to share. Secondly, I think folks are aware that in the mayor's April substance use disorder emergency order, the executive identified a need for a post-OD treatment facility. Seattle Fire Department is reversing overdoses of people in public places and then leaving people in the place where they cared for them outdoors. And so there's a need to find a place to transport people to for a short term. And this is a goal that is identified. There is a potential partnership with the county. And I just want to flag my interest in finding some funds for a capital contribution from the city to match that of the county. And then lastly, my question, I understand that there's a mid-year, that the mid-year supplemental includes a $530,000 transfer within the Human Services Department from underspend in the RHA contract. I understand, and it's supposed to come from TAP, and TAP has been entirely funded with one-time underspend thus far. So just trying to figure out where the underspend actually comes from. And I'm happy to take the answer to that question offline if we don't have it now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for flagging those. Interested to learn more. And I have kept you all very long today, so I will attempt to try to wrap up here. I want to flag a question that I'll be following up with central staff on, and that is related to the funding source for the downtown activation plan, I'm concerned around initial analysis that the public hygiene budget is going towards that. So I have some follow-up questions there, and we'll just be looking to see how we can ensure that the hygiene budget is still protected. The second thing that I'm very interested in, and I know that this is probably not a surprise to folks, but regarding some of the comments that are made in a memo and it was shared here by Eden as well in our presentation, I am very interested in ensuring that there is that transparency and accountability for the Jumpstart Fund that I mentioned earlier this morning. We want to, I think, ensure that there is clear direction that the Jumpstart transfer, it should allow for us to do the Jumpstart transfer in the general fund in 2023 in accordance with the flexibility funding that we authorize. And I would like central staff to draft language and direction so that we can amend the policies to ensure that there is clarity that moving forward at a minimum, a true up happens mid-year, not just at the end of the year, and that the 2020 estimates that we had codified in statute according to our unanimously passed spend plan, that those dollar amounts are also codified moving forward and inflated annually for inflation as we intended. So we talked a lot about the 2020 spend plan in last year's budget. I think one way to ensure that there is a minimum threshold that gets spent towards these priorities is to codify that dollar amount in the 2020 dollars and then adjust for that annually. So that is not probably all able to be fit within a supplemental budget. This would be a corresponding legislation that I'd love to see worked up to adjust for some of these issues that we're seeing. Deputy Director Panucci.
Yeah, very briefly, thank you, Chair Mosqueda. I just want to note in terms of the amendment process, yes, we need to know how they're balanced. And if you have specific ideas of where to cut funds, we invite those to you. But I also want to recognize, given the previous conversations, the council's at a disadvantage at understanding where there might be savings happening in departments right now. So I just want to, in terms of getting information to central staff about your amendment ideas, we will work with you on figuring out how to balance those. Let us know what you are looking for. We will talk with the executive to help us find where those savings are, given we don't have access to that data. So please get us your ideas. We will work with you. We will do our best to figure out ways to help you achieve your mid-year budget priorities.
Thank you. Woo, long morning. Thank you for holding out with me. And if other folks have ideas that they'd like to flag for central staff, please go ahead and do so before Monday, or excuse me, by noon on Monday. And then we will be able to work with you all by August 2nd to ensure that we have a more robust discussion. At that August 2nd date, we will have the mid-year supplemental budget. We will follow up on this fiscal note enhancements and budget transparency item. And if there is urgency on the HSD 2023 annual action plan, we may have that on the agenda as well. Okay, that concludes our long meeting for today. So we will say thank you to everyone and meeting is adjourned.